Chapter 360. This is your boarding pass. Are you sure you don't want to keep it? At Guadalajara Airport in New York, Jiang Hai held 2 boarding passes in his hand and said to Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi in front of him. Yes, sometimes time always passes quietly. Unknowingly, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi have been in the United States for 11 days. Their visas have expired today. It's time to return home. Jiang Hai and the others returned to New York from his manor 2 days ago. It's not easy to come here, not to mention the relationship between these 2 women and himself. Jiang Hai was also very generous. They stayed at the Westin Hotel in Times Square. The food was also the best. Of course, in addition to these, Jiang Hai also bought a lot of things for them. But the 2 women were very stubborn. They lived in Jiang Hai and ate Jiang Hai's food. However, they didn't want the clothes Jiang Hai bought for them. But Jiang Hai still sent them out and mixed them in the luggage they were transporting. After all, they were transporting too many things. In addition to shopping, they also went to all the places in New York. Although it was only 2 days, they still had a lot of fun. With Jiang Hai as a fake guide, they also went to all the places in New York. They had taken a picture with the Statue of Liberty, looked at the sea with binoculars, and went to Broadway Street. They had also gone shopping there and watched an opera, The Lion King. They had all seen this cartoon before, but this was the first time they had seen a stage play. But unfortunately, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi didn't understand what they were talking about, so they ran away after watching 2/3 of it. However, the 2 women saved some small videos in their mobile phones. Whether they finished watching it or not, they at least watched it. They also went to Wall Street to experience the feeling of a financial city. But to be honest, 2 young models and a cattle farmer really couldn't feel the elite atmosphere here. They were more like tourists. No, they were tourists. After walking around the area, they also went to Central Park, the United Nations headquarters, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which was the prototype of the amazing night at the museum. They also went to the top floor of the Empire State Building. This was where King Kong had taken the plane for his beloved woman. After avoiding the cameras, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi also helped Jiang Hai take the plane. There was also New York's Grand Central train station. Above the train station was the home court of the Knicks. Unfortunately, the NBA regular season in May had already ended. The home court of the Knicks, who had not entered the playoffs, was quite deserted. Of course, in June there was another big event here, which was the talent show. However, this year was not a big year, and it was estimated that there would not be too much explosive news. Finally, the most famous one was Times Square, but Jiang Hai and the others lived there, so there wasn't much to see. Compared to these attractions, it was obvious that Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi were more interested in Fifth Avenue. The luxury goods there were inexplicably lethal for these women. But even abroad, the price of these things was much lower than expected. For example, a Burberry windbreaker was sold for $100,000 in China, but it was sold for about $10,000 here. However, $10,000 was not a small amount. For Ai Xiaoxi, she could only look at it. Feng Yunshan, on the other hand, was quite wealthy. She bought a set of clothes back. Of course, all of this was seen by Jiang Hai. The clothes that Jiang Hai bought for them were naturally from this street. From the windbreaker, shirt, pants, boots, shoes and bag, the whole set cost $200,000 per person. It was just that they didn't know it. In addition, Jiang Hai also gave them 2 special gifts. One of them was placed in the luggage and the other was placed on Feng Yunshan. Feng Yunshan knew about this, but Ai Xiaoxi didn't know. I said, we will think about it again. Don't worry, if we have a result, we will tell you as soon as possible. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Feng Yunshan raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, she is not a woman who likes to rely on men. Although it is good to stay with Jiang Hai, she still has to go back and think about it. Looking at the 2 first-class boarding passes in their hands, this was a gift that they happily accepted. Because if they go back in economy class, it would be too uncomfortable. It just so happens that the money for the economy class tickets will be their subsidy. Although these 2 tickets can buy a good car when they return to China, for Jiang Hai, 100,000 Wuxia yuan is actually not a lot of money. After all, his current money is calculated in hundreds of millions. Well, I have said what I need to say. I wish you a safe trip. Hearing Feng Yunshan's resolute words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but shrug and finally said helplessly. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi on this side couldn't help but laugh. You have been on the plane so many times. Don't you know that the plane flies against the wind? Won't you fall down with the wind, idiot? Okay, let's not talk about it. We have to go. Ai Xiaoxi looked at Jiang Hai and said softly, then took the initiative to walk in front of Jiang Hai. Under Feng Yunshan's gaze, she and Jiang Hai had a wet kiss. After about 3 minutes they left. She felt that she really couldn't stay here any longer because if she stayed any longer she was really afraid that she would fall in love with Jiang Hai. At that time, it would be really troublesome, because she knows that she and Feng Yunshan have no future with Jiang Hai. When Jiang Hai didn't have time to react, Feng Yunshan's mouth was also on his. After kissing the two girls goodbye, the two girls also carried their handbags and walked into the security checkpoint, looking back 3 times with each step. Until they couldn't be seen, Jiang Hai sighed. To be honest, in these 11 days Jiang Hai was really happy. There were girls hugging him to sleep until dawn, especially with 2 girls. He didn't even think about it before. Now that he thought about it, it was like a dream. When these people left, Jiang Hai also felt empty in his heart. AI, those who should leave can't leave, and those who should stay can't stay. Until he received a call from Feng Yunshan, telling Jiang Hai that they had ascended the throne. Jiang Hai also sighed. After hanging up the phone, he whispered in a low voice. Well, from today onwards I will be a single dog again. But I seem to have Aphrodite. My head hurts. Patting his forehead, Jiang Hai said somewhat speechlessly. Originally, when Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi were here, the existence of Aphrodite made Jiang Hai not so embarrassed. But now that these 2 women are gone, the only one in the entire manor who had a special relationship with Jiang Hai was Aphrodite. This made Jiang Hai a little embarrassed. For a while he didn't want to go back and face Aphrodite like this. Should I find a reason to go back a few days later? Touching his chin, Jiang Hai muttered in a low voice. After thinking about it for a while, it seemed that this was the best solution at the moment. Therefore he made a call back. He did not call Aphrodite directly, but called Delina and Marian, telling them that he still had some things to do in New York and would be back a few days later. These days, Aphrodite will help take care of the woman he still locked in the warehouse. Yes, the former KGB female agent caught by Jiang Hai when he was in danger at sea last time was still locked in Jiang Hai's warehouse, but she had changed from her original form to another one. Jiang Hai deliberately welded a small cell in the warehouse. There was originally a toilet and a drain in the warehouse, so Jiang Hai didn't have to worry about her going to the bathroom. After asking for so many days, Jiang Hai actually believed that she shouldn't be sent by others. Because he really didn't have any interrogation methods to use, and this woman was also very cooperative and didn't care about being locked up here. It didn't matter if Aphrodite helped him deliver a meal or something like that. Now the person he trusted the most in the manor, besides Delina and Marian, was Aphrodite. After all, the relationship between the two was also somewhat unclear. After Jiang Hai finished the phone call, he breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, it was temporary, but the next question came. What was he doing in New York? Traveling? He was crazy traveling here. It's not like he hasn't been here before. And the most important thing was that he had just played here and there was really nothing fun to do here. It was said that men become bad when they are rich, and rich and bored men are even more likely to become bad. For example, Jiang Hai now. Some people said that it only takes a week for people to develop a habit. Jiang Hai is now hugging a girl to sleep, and it has gradually become a habit. Now if he hugs a pillow to sleep at night, he will definitely feel uncomfortable. Thinking of this, he thought of Moses Adams. That guy seemed to know where the fun places were in this place. A telephone call was made. Moses Adams was at that moment in Winthrop wrangling with the old fellows of the town. With Jiang Hai's advice and the old guy's own research, Winthrop can indeed be developed into a tourist attraction. Mayor Wallace had already gone to the Alabama mountains a few days ago and discussed with the Iroquois people there. They can sell a large number of handmade wood carvings to Mayor Wallace, and they can also sell him wild American ginseng and the like. Of course they have to exchange something for it. Mayor Wallace also agreed to this. In the end, the town discussed a total of 10 tourism affairs, namely a seaside villa, a public bathing area, fishing boats going out in the morning, a horse ranch, some small private ranches, visits to farms, expansion of a gun shop and shooting range, a street of souvenir shops, the earliest church in Massachusetts, a party square for barbecue and a fishing area in the river. Chapter 361. Of the 10 development options, the public baths, schools, party squares, and fishing grounds would all be funded by the town hall, and all the profits would go to the town hall. The town hall would organize the racecourse, private estates, and fishing boats, and collect about 10% of the publicity fees. The rest would go to the original owners. Jiang Hai was only allowed to participate in 3 projects, which were also the most important ones. One of them was a seaside villa. Moses Adams had already negotiated that Jiang Hai would fully fund the construction, and the town hall would provide the manpower and approval. After the villa was built, the land and the house would belong to Jiang Hai, but it could only be used for commercial purposes. Of course, Jiang Hai could live in it himself. Jiang Hai didn't want management rights, but the annual dividends would be 58.2% for Jiang Hai 31.7% for the town hall and 10.1% for all the registered residents of the town. Was this also called equal distribution? Well, it seemed to be a bit of a misnomer. Jiang Hai funded the expansion of the gun shop and the shooting range, but the gun shop belonged to the town hall. The guns and bullets in the shop were all bought and processed by the government. The same went for the licenses and other things. Jiang Hai also didn't participate in the management, but he would receive 30% of the annual dividends. Jiang Hai fully funded the construction of the souvenir street. There were 37 shops on the street, and Jiang Hai owned 11 of them. These 11 houses were Jiang Hai's. He could do whatever he wanted with them. He could rent them out or sell them. It was all up to him. Of course, if the attraction didn't work out, these 11 houses would probably be of no use at all. Jiang Hai was quite satisfied with the negotiations, even though he only took up 3 of the 10 projects. However, for Jiang Hai this was a good thing. He had a lot of cash in his hands, but if he kept the cash in his hands in addition to being demoted, it was easy to attract the jealousy of others. Now that he had invested it into real estate, it was a good thing. According to Moses Adams, Jiang Hai would need to invest more than $200 million in these 3 projects. Among them, the shooting range was the cheapest. It only required an investment of about $20 million. Expansion and soundproofing were the only 2 things that needed to be considered. The villa complex cost the most money. It cost more than 170 million yuan. After all, Jiang Hai planned to build 20 villas in one phase. Fortunately, they were in America. If they were in China, it would be impossible to build 20 villas for more than $1 billion. Especially on the seaside, the villas built were not small. The villas designed by Jiang Hai all had 2 doors, one facing the road and the other facing the sea. The whole villa had a garage. It was a 2.5-story building, covering an area of 600 square meters. The whole villa had a usable area of about 1,000 square meters. The first floor was the kind that could be directly opened. From the very beginning, Jiang Hai had never intended to rent these seaside villas to ordinary people. These villas were specially prepared for the rich. $2,000 per night was a very fair price. Of course, for ordinary people it was unacceptable. As for the street, it would cost at least 50 million yuan. It would cost almost half of Jiang Hai's cash. But Jiang Hai didn't care because he knew that he would earn the money back sooner or later. Moses Adams also performed very well in the process of this negotiation. Jiang Hai estimated that his commission would be in the millions, or even tens of millions. So at this time, there was a hint of excitement in his voice. After reporting the recent situation, Jiang Hai also asked what he wanted to know the most at present. Where does a single rich man go to play at night in New York? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Moses Adams naturally knew what he meant, so he gave him an address. According to Moses Adams, it was a bar, but he didn't say what kind of bar it was. However, Jiang Hai also guessed it. Although he didn't like places that were too violent like those nightclubs. But if it was a place to play, he wasn't very opposed. For a while he didn't know why, but he was still a little excited. After writing down the address, Jiang Hai also hung up the phone and drove back to the hotel. After arriving at the hotel, Jiang Hai went to eat first, and then stayed in his presidential suite until night fell. After all, when he, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunshan came together, it was impossible for them to book more rooms. Naturally, a presidential suite was enough. For this reason they even took 2 sets of photos here. It was really because there were not many opportunities to stay here. Unknowingly, time slowly passed. According to Moses Adams, the place would open for business at night. When the moon was high in the sky, Jiang Hai came out of his room. With his shield on, Jiang Hai merged into the rolling traffic downstairs according to the location indicated on the GPS. New York was actually not a whole city, unlike some cities in China or Hong Kong. In fact, New York was a city made up of many islands, so there were many sea bridges in New York. Of course, these islands were very close to each other. The whole of New York was divided into 3 islands: Manhattan, Staten Island, and Long Island. Among them, Manhattan was New York. Could also be said that it was the center of the world. Next to Manhattan was the Bronx. Next to Manhattan and the Bronx was Queens. Further down was Brooklyn. Further down there was a separate island, which was Staten Island. If Boston was the world of the Gray Gang in the past, it had changed now. However, it could be said that New York was still ruled by the Gray Gang. Of course, the major tourist areas like Manhattan were relatively peaceful. The police were everywhere, so it was naturally difficult for any kind of crime to survive in such an environment. But except for Manhattan, the other areas were not so good, especially the Bronx, which was part of Queens. It was also the most chaotic place, and Brooklyn was the place where black people lived. Of course, the place that Jiang Hai wants to go to has nothing to do with these places. He is a rich man, a man who is not brave enough to take risks. Therefore, the place that he wants to go to has to be very safe. So, the place Jiang Hai chose this time was not far from where he lived. Although New York wasn't as small as Boston, it wasn't particularly big either. In some large international cities, there were actually problems in this regard. In some prosperous places, there were often some dilapidated old buildings and the like. It was the same in China. It was not that the local government did not want to demolish these places, but because they could not afford it. As the largest city in the world, the land price in the city center of New York was extremely expensive. Therefore, the most famous Fifth Avenue in New York was actually a small shabby street. If it weren't for the luxury shops on both sides of the street, it would be difficult for people to associate this place with the arrogant name of Fifth Avenue, including the most famous Champs-Élysées in France. Even a long time ago, that street did not have sewers. This was the other side of the prosperous city. The place Jiang Hai wanted to go was also in Manhattan, but it was a relatively remote alley. Even though it was a small alley, there were police cars passing by every 2 or 3 minutes, but the police cars would not stop here. Looking at the cars parked on the side of the road, it was clear that almost all of them were worth less than $300,000. It was fine to drive an ordinary Mercedes-Benz or a BMW, but it was better to park far away, otherwise it would be embarrassing. As for the cars from Japan, he would try to drive them in and see if he would be despised. Jiang Hai's Tomahawk was not the best car, but it was definitely something of the upper class. Jiang Hai drove to the place Moses Adams said. After parking the car, he walked to a closed shop. The name of the shop was Midnight Wild, but there wasn't a single bit of music to be heard from outside. Following Moses Adams' words, Jiang Hai walked to the big iron door and knocked on it a few times. Then a small iron window opened, revealing a black man's eyes. He was sizing up Jiang Hai. Farwin introduced me here. Feeling Farwin's gaze, Jiang Hai handed over a Franklin and said at the same time. Farwin was Moses Adams's alias here. Lawyers like Moses Adams often handled big cases, and it was his duty to invite clients to have fun. Some of the clients in merger cases liked all kinds of things, so he was quite familiar with this kind of place. Hearing that it was an acquaintance and that Jiang Hai gave him a tip of $100, the black man immediately smiled, opened the door and respectfully invited Jiang Hai in. As soon as the door opened, music came out from inside. But what surprised Jiang Hai was that although the music here was electronic music, it wasn't too loud, but the rhythm was really fast. Jiang Hai didn't like music that was too loud, especially underground rock and the like. It seemed that Moses Adams was still very familiar with Jiang Hai's habits, and the shop he recommended wasn't too lively. After entering the door and passing through a short passage, a slightly dim hall appeared in Jiang Hai's line of sight. The first thing that caught his eye was a huge tea stage in the middle of the hall. Next to the tea stage there were many small stages. On each of these stages there was a steel pipe. At this time, on each of these stages, there was a girl standing there, swaying from side to side. Then, according to the reward money given by the guests, they decided to strip to a certain extent. Of course, in the end she would strip naked, but it also depended on the popularity. If the audience below the stage was no longer interested in her, then she would have to sell more benefits. If they were still interested, then she would have to take it off a little slower. When Jiang Hai came in, it seemed that the first show was already halfway through, and the whole stage was white. Chapter 362. Wow, interesting. Looking at the seductive figures on the stage, Jiang Hai was instantly interested. He came to see these things. He always heard that there were many such clubs in the United States, but this is the first time he has come. Sir, how many? At this moment, a waitress wearing only underwear and a rabbit ear on her head also came over with a smile. It seems that the waiters here are all dressed like this. Just me. Looking at the flowery skin in front of him, Jiang Hai said with a slightly shy smile. I'll arrange a nearby position for you. Is there a type you like? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl also smiled and said. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also glanced at the scene. To be honest, he was a little uncertain. There are a total of 12 stages here. The dancers on each stage are different. The tea stage in the middle is used for the big show at 12 o'clock in the evening. Before 12 o'clock, only these 12 stages have performances. 3 of them are black stages, 3 are white stages, 3 are Latino stages and 3 are Asian stages. Looking at your dress, you should be Asian. Do you want to sit over there and have a look? There are dancers from India performing tonight. Looking at Jiang Hai's somewhat confused look, the waitress also said briskly, Indian performance? That can be watched. Although he doesn't like Indian people, their beauties are still good. This way, please. Hearing Jiang Hai say that he wants to see, the waitress also led Jiang Hai to a stage. The stage here is called a stage, but it is really not big. It is about 2 square meters. Below this high platform, there is a floor dedicated to wine glasses and the like. People sitting here can watch these stages at a close distance. Of course, if you spend enough money, you could get as close as you wanted to. You could even touch her with your hands. However, if the dancer didn't want to, you could just make a move. If you did that, you would be escorted away by the security guards. Whether or not you would be punched before you left depended on how sweet your mouth was. There is no direct transaction here. No one can force these dancers, but if she also likes a guest, it doesn't matter if the two chat privately and the bar won't care. The waiter led Jiang Hai to a bar where a performance was going on. This bar could seat up to 10 people and it could seat more if it was crowded. However, in order to avoid any accidents with these hot-blooded people, only 4 seats were arranged. Jiang Hai looked at Jiang Hai. 1 in the east, south, west, and north. If you bring other friends, you can sit more. When Jiang Hai arrived at the stage, there were already 3 people sitting in the audience. What made Jiang Hai surprised was that there were 2 men and 1 woman. One of them had an unclear relationship with the other. Not only were there men, but there were also women as well. Jiang Hai was surprised. Although Jiang Hai is a little curious, he didn't ask much. After he was directly arranged to a seat, Jiang Hai also looked at the bar above his head. The dancer on the bar is indeed a woman from India. Her skin is slightly dark, but her eyes are too big, even occupying 1/3 of the whole face. Coupled with the eyeliner and eyeshadow, she looks so big. She has a high nose and slightly delicate facial features. She is really not bad. After Jiang Hai sat down, he took out the money that Moses Adams told him to prepare. Here, you have to experience the extravagance of a nouveau riche, so when you give money, you directly throw it or stuff it into the other party's clothes. Well, if the other party has clothes, for people who don't have much money and are just here to pass the time, you use $1. Although Jiang Hai is not so rich as to only exchange $100 for a Franklin's, he is not so stingy. These dancers have an unusually high standard. Jiang Hai doesn't think he is handsome enough to make people fall for him, so he still has to use money. So he exchanged 2 stacks of 200 Jacksons, which are $20. Holding them in his hand, he really looks like he is in the right place. Every American bill has a different person printed on it. $1 is the first president of the United States, George Washington. $2 is the second president of the United States, Jefferson. $5 is the 16th president of the United States, Lincoln. $10 is the first secretary of the Treasury, Hamilton. $20 is the 7th president of the United States, Jackson. $50 is the 18th president of the United States, Grant. $100 is the great scientist, Franklin. This guy is most famous for inventing electricity. In elementary school textbooks, this guy flew a kite on a rainy day and was struck by lightning in the end. This is talking about him. Seeing the stack of $20 that Jiang Hai took out, not only does the eyes of the Indian girl on the stage light up, but she, who has no clothes on her upper body, gently lay down. Even the waiter who led Jiang Hai here has eyes shining. What would you like to drink, sir? Seeing that Jiang Hai's eyes were fixed on the dancer on the stage, the waiter asked in a low voice. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment. He drove. Although drunk driving is not as serious in the United States as it is in China, it is better not to drive when drinking. So he thought for a moment and said to the waiter, "A glass of juice. It's better not to drink when driving." "Wow, I didn't expect you to be a good man. Wait a moment." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the waiter smiled and left. Jiang Hai's eyes were attracted by the person on the stage. When she saw Jiang Hai looking over, the woman worked even harder. She even squatted down in front of Jiang Hai with her legs wide open. Through the thin pants, although he couldn't see anything, it gave Jiang Hai a different feeling. Seeing this, Jiang Hai picked up a $20 bill and threw it on the stage. However, the woman gently used her hips to push the $20 bill down the stage. At the same time, she shook her waist. Her meaning was clear. She wanted Jiang Hai to put it in. So this time Jiang Hai took 2 bills and put them in. Just as Jiang Hai put them in, the woman pulled back. Her pants, which were originally fastened with 2 bags, instantly opened. Jiang Hai saw half of the situation inside with one glance. Jiang Hai couldn't help but stare blankly at this accident. What was going on? He didn't do it on purpose. He wouldn't be kicked out, right? Moses Adams had told him on the phone that this wasn't allowed. Of course, there was another possibility, and that was that the dancer was willing to do it. Seeing Jiang Hai's adorable look, the third sister giggled as she danced on the side. Not only did she not stop, scream, or call security as Jiang Hai imagined, she even deliberately turned in another direction. Seeing this, Jiang Hai roughly understood that she did it on purpose. So Jiang Hai didn't say anything. He picked up another $20 bill and stuffed it in. Sure enough, as soon as Jiang Hai put it in, she pulled back again, and this time her pants slid down. In front of Jiang Hai, in a position that any normal man would be very excited to see, she kept drawing circles in front of Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, the people at the two nearby tables who had been watching happily couldn't help but turn and leave. They knew that when Jiang Hai tossed out $40, it would be time for them to retreat. One of the two groups of people had a battle to fight, and the other didn't look like someone who would spend hundreds of dollars for fun. Since Jiang Hai, this local tyrant, had come, naturally there was nothing for them to do. They were not allowed to cause trouble, nor were they allowed to force others. Instead of looking at buttocks, they might as well go and look at other tables. Seeing that the others had left, the girl started dancing even harder. She even pulled open her pants so that Jiang Hai could see what was inside. It was Jiang Hai's first time seeing such a scene. Jiang Hai wasn't stingy. He tossed the $20 to the girl one by one, which made her dance even crazier. It must be noted that it wasn't easy for people of color to make a living in the United States. For dancers like her, it was better for white people because they had a wide audience. Even if they only earned $1 a day, they could earn more than $200 a day. Excluding the time they had to rest, they could earn $4,000 a month. Black people had their own fixed group and their income was slightly lower. They could earn about $3,000 a month. Latin Americans could be considered to be on the same continent as North Americans, and their income wasn't bad either. The most miserable ones were those from Asia, whose audience was too small. The Chinese were too conservative, so many decent men rarely came here. For example, before Jiang Hai came, she had only earned $50 in total when her performance was almost over. Jiang Hai, on the other hand, had thrown in $80 as soon as he arrived. Before she knew it, he had already earned more than $200. She had already earned more than the white dancers today. How could she not work hard? The more she looked at Jiang Hai, the more she liked him. "Sir, your orange juice." Just then, the waitress came over with a glass of orange juice. "Thank you." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai responded with a smile. He then picked up two $20 and gave them to her. This glass of orange juice was about $3. Jiang Hai was naturally very generous to give her $40. Looking at Jiang Hai, the waitress's eyes lit up, but she didn't take the money. Instead, she deliberately bent down to show Jiang Hai her breasts, which were a little out of shape because of the squeezing of her top, and gestured for him to put the money in. Jiang Hai wouldn't give up such good benefits. Naturally, he went along with her wishes. The smooth and soft feeling was indeed not bad. After staying in the glass for about a minute, Jiang Hai finally pulled his hand out. The girl didn't stand on ceremony. She just put the orange juice in front of Jiang Hai, and then took the initiative to sit in Jiang Hai's arms. As soon as she sat in, Jiang Hai's face instantly turned red, because she was sitting in a very awkward position. Chapter 363. It seems that you don't come here often. Jiang Hai had watched the performance for a long time. He was a normal man. Naturally, after watching the performance, he had the reaction of some men. When she sat down, she just happened to sit there. However, the waitress here, although not a professional, was not a rookie. She didn't care. She deliberately helped Jiang Hai to a comfortable position through his pants before sitting down again. With one hand on the bar in front of her, the other hand had already grabbed Jiang Hai's hand and quietly stuffed it into her shirt. It seemed that this benefit was a bit too much. It's my first time here." Although he was a little worried about being banned, Jiang Hai was now an arrow on the bow. There was nothing to say. He just smiled awkwardly and said to the waitress, "If you come here to play, you have to be more open, right? Come on, eat more. Let our new mister see your unique skills." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the waitress also picked up Jiang Hai's other hand and put it in. At the same time, she said to the third female sister on the stage. Originally, this dancer was a little annoyed with the waitress who came to steal his work. Now that he heard her work, he danced even more vigorously. At the same time, his vital position was getting closer and closer to Jiang Hai and the waitress. When the waitress saw this scene, she took the initiative to stretch out her hand and stirred there. The fingers that were stirred up were also put in her mouth. Looking at this scene in front of him, Jiang Hai felt that at this time, he was a character in a cartoon that he saw when he was young. The third baby in the Calabash Brothers was really hard from head to toe. Feeling that Jiang Hai was getting more and more into the mood, the waitress here also smiled and said, "I'll help you. I'll go outside." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai froze for a moment. Indeed, he needed to solve it now. No, it's too troublesome to go outside. The toilet is probably already full of people now. We'll just stay here. Anyway, there's no one else here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the waitress whispered. Hearing what she said, Jiang Hai was a little stunned. There's no one else here? There are almost 100 people next to them. Is this no one else? Not far away, there's one in front of them. But the waitress didn't give Jiang Hai a chance to refuse. She stood up gently and then released Jiang Hai with her hands. After putting his pants aside, she sat down. Maybe this woman really didn't know Jiang Hai's strength. She went straight to the end. Even a white woman like her couldn't help but groan. Her whole body trembled. As for the dancers on the stage, they couldn't help but stop. Don't stop, continue. Raising her head, the waitress said to the dancer in front of her, and she also moved. At the same time, her two hands were in front of Jiang Hai, constantly playing with the dancer. The scene was really exciting for Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai, who usually has an hour of combat power, was finished in 20 minutes this time. As Jiang Hai shook, the waitress also shook. After about a minute, she slowly stood up. But as soon as she stood up, she felt that something leaked out. She immediately looked back and found that Jiang Hai's pants were dirty. I'm really sorry. Looking at Jiang Hai's dirty pants, the waitress immediately turned back and whispered, "It's okay, I'll wash it." Hearing the waitress' words, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed. This scene was really something he had never experienced. Seeing that the waitress was about to leave, Jiang Hai also stood up and took out about half of the money from the stack of money and handed it to the waitress. "I only want this." However, the waitress only counted 10 from it, and then left as if nothing had happened. Looking at the leaving waitress, the secretion in Jiang Hai's mind was relieved. "Can I come to you later?" At this moment, the dance music here was also over. After the dancer got off the stage, she whispered to Jiang Hai. Needless to say, he understood what she meant. Of course. Jiang Hai listened to her words and nodded. He hasn't tried this kind of exotic feeling yet. Hearing that Jiang Hai agreed, the dancer smiled and touched Jiang Hai, then turned back to the backstage. She had to clean up quickly so that she could come out to find Jiang Hai. First, it was for money, and second, it was because of the scene just now, which made her have some ideas. Seeing that there was no one on the stage, Jiang Hai also thought about it and decided to go to the bathroom to wash first. However, when he arrived at the bathroom, he found that it was not peaceful inside. Almost every cubicle was filled with sounds that made people daydream. Outside these cubicles, there were many men and women, but at this time, they were still restraining themselves. They were just hugging and kissing or touching with their hands. They had not really started yet. Jiang Hai looked at this scene, and the embarrassment on his face was really thick. He walked to the sink and washed his pants. After that, Jiang Hai left the bathroom. Fortunately, he was wearing dark pants today, otherwise, it would be even more embarrassing. When he came out, he found that a group of people just came in. Looking at this group of people, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. Because he knew this group of people. There were a total of 11 people in this group. In addition to the 4 bodyguards, there were 7 women. The leader was a woman wearing men's clothes. If Jiang Hai was not mistaken, this woman seemed to be Prawalton. At this time, the big sister in Jiang Hai's eyes changed into a different dress from her usual dress. Her long hair was also tied up by her. She wore a slightly loose gender-neutral suit with a white shirt inside. The suit really outlined her figure. Beside her, there were 6 women dressed in women's clothes. Jiang Hai didn't know 5 of them. There were 2 Caucasians, 2 Latin Americans, and 1 Asian girl, but Jiang Hai knew the other person. It was Selena Gomez, who went to his place to play and helped him. Did they also come here to play? Thinking of this, Jiang Hai walked over and was ready to say hello, but as soon as he walked over, a bodyguard stopped him. Seeing the bodyguard's action, Jiang Hai couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He himself was looking for a bodyguard. Just as Jiang Hai wanted to explain that he knew Walton and Selena Gomez had already looked over. When they saw that it was Jiang Hai, a look of surprise flashed on their faces. "Jiang, why are you here?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Walton said with some surprise. "Oh, I came to New York to see a friend off. I have nothing to do at night, so I came to play. What about you? What's the situation?" Hearing that Walton knew Jiang Hai, The bodyguard who was originally blocking Jiang Hai took a step back. In fact, he also knew Jiang Hai, but without Prawalton's permission, he couldn't let Jiang Hai get in touch with his employer. I also came here to play. Well, the next show is about to start. I have to accompany my friend. Your bill tonight is on me. Have fun. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton said with a smile. You can forget about it. I drove here and I don't drink. I have already paid for a glass of orange juice. Waving his hand at Prawalton, Jiang Hai smiled and walked back to his seat. Prawalton also chuckled and sat in front of a white dancer's stage. The owner of the bar here had already prepared the place. She was a big customer, so he had to curry favor with her. When Jiang Hai returned to his seat, the original Indian dancer had already changed her clothes and was waiting for him. Shall we go now or watch a little longer? Seeing Jiang Hai coming, the woman took the initiative to greet him and held Jiang Hai's arm with a smile. She had already earned more than $300 from dancing just now. Most of it was Jiang Hai's, so she could leave early tonight. As for going out with Jiang Hai later, she had decided to do it for free. Of course, if Jiang Hai has some other requirements, she may charge some extra fees. But it seems that Jiang Hai doesn't seem to be that kind of pervert, so her safety can still be guaranteed. Let's watch a little longer. Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai just had fun, so he was not in a hurry, so he sat down first. As soon as he sat down, the girl took the initiative to sit on Jiang Hai like the waitress just now. And Jiang Hai also followed the train of thought just now, placing his hands one up and one down. At this time, the music sounded and another show began. This time, the woman in front of Jiang Hai was also an Asian. However, her appearance was similar to that of the Chinese people. Unlike the woman in his arms, who had obvious foreign characteristics, this person didn't seem to be from another country. Of course, this didn't mean that this woman was from Wuxia, Japan or Korea. It was also possible. But Jiang Hai guessed wrong. Just as Jiang Hai was curious about the beauty's identity, the dancer in his arms had already started to talk. This is Ruan Kong, a Southern Yu person and the most flexible one here. Hearing her words, the dancer had already moved. Indeed, this woman's flexibility was indeed strong. The first move was to bend down, letting Jiang Hai look at her upper body first, then at her lower body. Although it was all clothes, it was still very interesting. Seeing this, Jiang Hai immediately began to tip. After all, watching a show was like reading a novel. If it was enjoyable, naturally he would tip. Seeing Jiang Hai throwing $20 on the stage, the girl was also ecstatic. She knew that this time she met a rich man, so she immediately danced even harder. Among the 12 stages, she was the first one to be naked. Seeing this, Jiang Hai couldn't help but exclaim, "This is really a place to stimulate hormones." Chapter 364. Shall we go? Looking at the performance on the stage, which was getting more and more intense, Jiang Hai, who had just finished his business, asked. Unknowingly, Jiang Hai felt something again. The girl who had been sitting close to Jiang Hai's chest naturally felt the difference in Jiang Hai. She smiled and asked Jiang Hai. At the same time, she put her hand on his chest. Okay. Hearing the girl's words, Jiang Hai didn't feel any burden. In any case, he came here to have fun. It was impossible for him to have any other interactions with this girl. This was the reason why he came here. So now that the girl mentioned it, Jiang Hai smiled and said. At the same time, he put the orange juice in his hand on the table. After standing up, he turned around and was about to leave with the girl. The waiter just now was just a fast food customer. Now, Jiang Hai was about to have a proper meal, but just as Jiang Hai and the girl were about to leave, they were stopped by the woman behind them. Hey, can you take me with you? Looking back, Jiang Hai looked at the girl behind him who was about to finish her performance. He was a little surprised. He only heard about it before, but it was the first time he encountered such a thing. He couldn't help but look at the girl beside him. This girl naturally didn't care. After all, Jiang Hai was the investor, so she just smiled and shrugged. Okay. In line with the principle of fun, everyone should look for fun together. Jiang Hai waved to the Southern Yu girl on the stage. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl excitedly jumped up and down. That majestic thing couldn't help but shake up and down violently. Jiang Hai's eyes almost popped out of his head. Fortunately, the girl only jumped a little, then quickly put on her clothes. She didn't go back to the back to change her clothes. She directly put on her costume and left with Jiang Hai, one on his left and one on his right. There was no other way. The income of dancing here for a day was not as much as the reward Jiang Hai gave just now. It was said that girls love tickets. Girls nowadays loved money the most. Since Jiang Hai was so willing to spend money, who else could she spend it with but him? For the initiative of the two girls, Jiang Hai naturally would not refuse. One on the left and one on the right, he took them away from here. He went straight into his car. Although this was a small alley, it was still considered a public street. Under the guidance of the two girls, Jiang Hai circled to the back of the alley, where it was much darker. Although it was dark, there were many cars here and many of them were shaking violently. Jiang Hai was no stranger to this kind of shaking. At this time he was even more anxious. After stopping at a dark place, Jiang Hai jumped from the driver's seat to the back seat. Along with a few exclamations of laughter, Jiang Hai's shield also began to shake unconsciously. You have to relax when you come out to play. Don't always be tense. It's not good for you. Come on, have a drink. Regardless of Jiang Hai's situation, on the other side of the stage as the performance approached the end, Prawalton also turned her eyes from the dancers on the stage to Selena Gomez next to her and said to her with a chuckle. Beside her, the other 5 women had already begun to dance to the music. Their eyes wandered between Prawalton and the dancers on the stage from time to time. As for their gazes, Prawalton didn't care. Her attention was now more focused on Selena Gomez next to her. No, Sister Prawalton, I really can't drink. I have to protect my vocal cords. Hearing Prawalton's words, Selena Gomez shook her head and politely refused. Don't say such useless words. Don't forget where we met. Wine, it's not like you don't drink. Come on, drink it. However, her words didn't make Prawalton back off. Instead, she deliberately moved closer to her and brought the wine to her mouth. Needless to say, if Selena Gomez didn't drink, she would force it. Sister Prawalton, I really don't drink. Looking at Prawalton's actions, Selena Gomez was shocked. She didn't expect this sister to be so fierce. She didn't drink, but she dared to force her to drink. Come on, just one glass. Seeing that she was still dodging, Prawalton couldn't help but use a little more force. As soon as she used force, Selena Gomez also began to use force. In an instant, the wine glass that was still balanced fell down in an instant. Wah! The wine in the glass was instantly poured on Selena Gomez. The women who were watching the performance next to them also looked at their sides in an instant. When they found out that it was wine, everyone was stunned and looked at Selena Gomez and Prawalton. For a moment, the whole scene was extremely awkward. Prawalton took the wine glass away first and then drank it all. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. This time it's really troublesome. Let's go back and change clothes. Looking at Selena Gomez in front of her, Prawalton said with regret. Oh, it's nothing. I have a waterproof layer in the middle of my clothes. I'll go inside and wipe it. Originally, Selena Gomez wasn't a person who played tricks, especially when she knew how powerful the sister next to her was. It may take some means to help her, but it's easy to destroy her. Moreover, the relationship between them was originally very close, but this kind of closeness was somewhat unbearable for Selena Gomez. However, no matter what, they were still good friends. Looking at the regretful look on Selena's face, it was hard for Selena Gomez to blame her. Therefore, after saying that, she got up and went to the bathroom to wash up. Looking at Selena Gomez who got up, the smile and panic on Prawalton's face gradually disappeared. Master, I don't understand, why are you so concerned about her? Just tie her up or hit her. There's no way she won't agree. Seeing that Selena Gomez had left, a woman on the other side took the initiative to approach her and ask curiously, What are you talking about? What do you know? Only this way is more interesting. Hearing the woman's words, Prawalton couldn't help but chuckle, then grabbed her hair with her hand, kissed her lips heavily, raised her head and said slowly. Then, she snapped her fingers, and the bodyguard next to her led a waiter that they had already negotiated with over to them. And Prawalton didn't look at the waiter, just gave him a Franklin and a red pill. For this kind of thing, the bartender here was not surprised and he also knew what to do. After receiving the money and medicine, the bartender respectfully nodded and left, while Prawalton continued to watch the performance on the stage. As for Selena Gomez at this time, she had unknowingly walked out of the bathroom. Her face was also flushed, although the women's bathroom was not like the men's bathroom. There was an inexplicable atmosphere. But in fact, there was also such a performance in the women's bathroom, but it was relatively rare. Some men would more or less consider this problem, and they wouldn't easily enter the women's bathroom, but many women would enter the men's bathroom. But it didn't mean that no one would enter. So when she was wiping her clothes, a lot of voices entered her ears, and some people even looked at her with eyes full of desire. She didn't know if she was recognized, but this made it difficult for her to stay here, so after a simple wipe, she returned to the table. Seeing Selena Gomez walk back, Prawalton also smiled. Come, order a drink. Since you don't want to drink, then have a drink. Looking at Selena Gomez, Prawalton didn't force her to drink this time, but spoke to her with a smile. Hearing Prawalton's words, Selena Gomez couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. In her opinion, if she drank too much, it would be bad. Drink should be fine. So she waved to the waiter in the distance, then ordered a cup of Long Island iced tea. This was a type of cocktail. Cocktails were made when alcohol was banned in the United States. Originally, it didn't contain alcohol, but later it was no longer banned. It was divided into two types, one without alcohol and one with alcohol. Selena Gomez ordered the one without alcohol. Soon, a cocktail appeared in front of her. She picked up the glass in front of her and drank gently. She had to admit that not only was the performance in this bar great, but of course for Selena Gomez, it was just a kind of adjustment. If Prawalton didn't want to come, she wouldn't have come. The performance didn't attract her, but the drink was really good. Seeing Selena Gomez drink up the Long Island iced tea in front of her, Prawalton also smiled. She knew that Selena Gomez would not be able to escape her clutches tonight. When she smiled, Selena Gomez just turned her head and saw this scene. As soon as she saw this smile, she didn't know why, but her heart skipped a beat. She felt that the food might be ruined. She began to think carefully about whether there was anything wrong with her tonight, but she couldn't think of anything. At this moment, she suddenly felt her heart beat suddenly, and then her consciousness began to fade, but her body was very hot. At this moment, she knew that she had unknowingly fallen into a trap. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Then let's go home. Looking at Selena Gomez's appearance, Prawalton couldn't help laughing. She was waiting for this moment and now she was a little anxious. Chapter 365. Are you feeling unwell? Let's go home. Looking at Selena Gomez's dazed eyes, Prawalton couldn't help but smile. After waiting for so long, it was finally time to reap the rewards. She believed that Selena Gomez would definitely fall in love with her. After all, she was mesmerized by the beauty in the mirror. No, thank you, I need to go to the bathroom. Feeling Prawalton's burning gaze, Selena Gomez couldn't help but stand up immediately. She didn't understand what was going on, and now she just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Because she didn't know when the drug would take effect. If she didn't leave by then, she would really fall into her hands. Then I'll go with you. Seeing that Selena could still stand up, Prawalton also stood up with a smile. It seemed that these girls who practiced dancing and singing were indeed in good physical condition. Even after being hit by a pill, they still didn't fall. Amazing. No need. Shaking her head, Selena Gomez quickly walked to the bathroom. We're all women, don't worry about it. We should help each other. However, Prawalton didn't give up so easily. After standing up, she forced herself to follow Selena to the bathroom. Fortunately, Selena's consciousness was still intact. When she entered the bathroom door, she locked it. Seeing that Selena locked the door, Prawalton couldn't help but raise her hand and put it down again. If she were to break down the door here, it would easily attract attention. By then, not only would Selena's reputation be ruined, her own reputation would also be affected. After all, to a certain extent, she was not only representing herself, but also the family behind her. So she just stopped here, but she gave her 4 bodyguards a look. 2 of them quickly left this place to prevent Selena from escaping, but sometimes she couldn't prevent it. After entering the bathroom, Selena Gomez ran directly to the sink, turned on the tap, and began to dig her throat, trying to spit out what she drank. Indeed, she spat it out, but this drug was instantaneous. This kind of drug was not too rare in the upper class of the United States, and it was extremely expensive. The main ingredient of this drug was blood orchid, a plant only produced on Kalimantan Island. After a man ate it, his combat power would double. After a woman ate it, she would also fall into a state of madness. It was a prop for many rich people to arouse their interest. Of course, the price was also very high. 1 blood orchid cost $1.5 million. Although Selena Gomez spat out most of the Long Island iced tea, her stomach still absorbed part of it. Just this part alone was enough. Leaning on the sink, Selena Gomez felt her head getting dizzier, and her body getting hotter and hotter. She gritted her teeth and saw a row of small windows on the wall behind the bathroom that served as ventilation. She had practiced dancing for many years, and with her slender body she could barely squeeze through. Thinking of this, she put her head under the tap and kept washing it. The cold water poured on her head, and her consciousness temporarily returned to her body. Then, taking advantage of her sobriety, she climbed to the row of windows in a few steps, ignoring the startled mandarin ducks around her. He stretched his head and squeezed his body out of the small window with great effort. Selena, are you okay? Hearing the rustling sound inside, Prawalton, who had been listening outside, was a little anxious. He couldn't help but knock on the door and ask inside. But after waiting for a while, no sound came back. So, Prawalton was also a little anxious. He gave a look to his men. Then, one of his bodyguards had already taken the key from the staff here and directly opened the door of the bathroom. Just as the door opened, Prawalton happened to see Selena Gomez jump out of the window. "Who is it? Go after her." Seeing the duck in his hand fly away, Prawalton couldn't just let it go. After speaking to the two bodyguards behind him, these people quickly chased out. At the same time, they informed the two bodyguards outside to go around the back alley at the first time. At this time, when Selena Gomez fell from the window, she just happened to fall on a car parked here. With a bang, the pair of wild mandarin ducks in the car were shocked. Then the man immediately put on his clothes and pants. Fortunately, it was late spring, so the temperature here wasn't low. He only had a jacket and a pair of pants. If it was winter, it would be troublesome. After putting on his clothes, the man ran out immediately. When he saw someone fall on the roof of his car, he couldn't help but curse, "Oh, who is it? F***CK, son of a bitch, do you want to die? My car. I'm sorry." At this time, Selena Gomez was not in the mood to care about his problem. She jumped out of the car awkwardly. After saying that, she wanted to leave, but she was caught by the man. "You want to leave with just an apology? You think too highly of yourself. If you don't pay for my car today, don't think about leaving." Pulling Selena Gomez's arm, the man shouted loudly. Under his pull, her wet hair was thrown to the side, and her face appeared in front of him. Selena Gomez. Although she was not a top superstar, her relationship with Justin Bieber was quite popular in the United States and Canada. Most Americans actually knew her face. They might not have listened to her music, but they were familiar with her face. Obviously, this man also recognized her. "Hey, if you don't want to pay for my car, then accompany me for a night. I'll pay for the fare." Looking at the delicate little face in front of him, the man said a little obscenely. Then he wanted to take Selena Gomez into the car, but Selena Gomez would not let him do as he wished. She used all her strength in her high heels and stepped heavily on the man's foot, who did not have time to put on his shoes. The instant pain in his foot forced the man to let go of her. She also took this opportunity to run forward awkwardly, but unfortunately she really did not have the strength. Although the kick was painful, it did not make the man give up. After screaming in pain twice, he limped after her. Now he was angry and anxious, but compared to playing with Selena in a while, these were not a problem. Feeling that the man behind her was chasing her again, Selena wanted to run faster, but she really could not speed up. In the end, in a hurry, her foot slipped and she fell again, but this time she was lucky to fall on the front cover of a car. With a bang, it also startled the three people in the back of the car. When the three of them were startled and got up to look, the man among the three of them recognized the person lying on the cover of the car at a glance. Selena Gomez? The man could be said to be very familiar with this woman, because this man was none other than Jiang Hai. After Jiang Hai brought the two girls out, he started in his car. With Jiang Hai's strong fighting power, the time naturally would not be short, especially when he was facing attacks from two sides at the same time. It was precisely because he did not leave that Jiang Hai was able to catch up. He and Selena Gomez could be said to be friends. Not only had she been to Jiang Hai's manor to play, but Jiang Hai had always remembered that she had helped him at the New York beef show. Jiang Hai was a person who knew how to repay kindness, so he immediately put on his clothes and got out of the car. As soon as he got out of the car, he saw a man limping over to Selena Gomez. "This has nothing to do with you, get lost. Stupid bitch, how dare you step on me?" When the man came over, he shouted at Jiang Hai, and then grabbed Selena's hair, wanting to drag her away. What a joke, you want to touch his friend in front of Jiang Hai. At that moment, Jiang Hai did not say anything and kicked him. The man did not expect Jiang Hai to be so fast and start the fight without saying a word. This gave him no time to react and he was kicked in the chest by Jiang Hai. The man flew for about 5 meters in the air before landing on another car. This time he fell much harder than when Selena stepped on his car. The entire rear windshield was shattered, and the man and woman who were fighting inside were shocked. The man immediately put on his clothes and ran out to see what was going on. At this time, Jiang Hai had already arrived in front of Selena and helped her up. What's going on? Looking at Selena Gomez, who seemed to be drunk, but there was no smell of alcohol on her body, Jiang Hai was a little confused. He looked at her with a puzzled face and asked. Hearing Jiang Hai's voice, Selena Gomez also woke up a little. When she saw that it was Jiang Hai, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said intermittently, "Hurry, let's go." After that, her head tilted. Although she didn't faint, she had no strength to run or speak. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai frowned, then put her in the back seat, said to the two girls to take care of her, and then was ready to leave. But before he left, two men in black chased after him. Jiang Hai remembered these two men. They were Prawalton's bodyguards. These two men were ordered to bring Selena Gomez back, but they just saw Jiang Hai carrying her into the car, which made them very unhappy. Now seeing that Jiang Hai was about to drive away, the two men here looked at each other, and one of them kicked him without saying a word. Chapter 366. It was dark now and it was very late. This was a place for guests who wanted to have fun. Therefore there were no street lights here. The two bodyguards didn't know who Jiang Hai was, and Jiang Hai didn't know who they were either. Now Jiang Hai just regarded them as people who came to steal Selena Gomez. In fact, they regarded Jiang Hai as someone who came to pick up the leftovers. There was nothing to say between the two sides. Let's fight. Although it was very dark now, Jiang Hai wasn't joking. He naturally felt the wind behind his head. He didn't even close the door. He directly turned around and kicked the bodyguard's leg heavily. When the two legs collided, the huge impact caused the bodyguard who was sneak attacking from behind to be unable to help but throw his leg back. He almost fell down. Although the bodyguards of Prawalton were all experienced in terms of skills, perhaps Bell wasn't as good as these people. After all, these people also retired from the world's top forces. Some were not even national organizations but mercenaries. There were more opportunities to fight between life and death. Therefore their combat effectiveness was also stronger. If they fought with Jiang Hai, no one knew the result. But if they fought so hard, it was impossible for them to be Jiang Hai's opponent. With a bang, the bodyguard's foot fell to the ground again. He felt that his leg was numb. But fortunately, this blow made Jiang Hai unable to get in the car easily. At this time, another bodyguard caught up. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of him, he immediately waved his fist directly. Compared to the first bodyguard, the second bodyguard was a black man. The night gave him the best cover, but Jiang Hai still couldn't see in the dark. However, it didn't prevent him from perceiving the existence of this guy. He felt this guy's fist coming towards him. Whoosh! Jiang Hai also directly punched the man's chest, but the man's reaction was faster. In fact, the punch just now was just a feint. He had already calculated Jiang Hai's movements. Now his knee was also aimed at Jiang Hai. When he felt the knee coming, Jiang Hai was actually stunned for a moment. Because at this time it was easy for him to dodge this attack. But his attack was about to end. Now here, Jiang Hai was afraid that a long delay would lead to trouble. After all, he didn't know who drugged Selena Gomez. If these people were from the local Grey Gang and he took too long, the other party's reinforcements would come and it would be troublesome. Jiang Hai still couldn't block a bullet. So now he could only choose to end the battle quickly. At the same time that he forcibly took the knee, Jiang Hai also punched the man's chest. Fist against knee, even a fool would know which side was stronger. In the black man's eyes, he definitely had the upper hand in this exchange. But he didn't expect that this was not a fair fight. His knee did hurt Jiang Hai, but the weight of Jiang Hai's fist was not something he could withstand. In an instant he punched out and directly sent the black man flying. If he went to do an X-ray at this time, he would find that some of his ribs were already broken. At the same time, his body flew back and smashed into a trash can with a crash. The things inside were smashed everywhere. At the same time, he temporarily lost the ability to fight. At the very least, he needed to rest for a while. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jiang Hai flashed in front of another bodyguard. This bodyguard had already overcome the soreness in his legs when his companions came over. He rushed over directly. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, this person didn't say anything and directly threw a heavy punch at Jiang Hai. Seeing that this person's heavy punch was about to hit Jiang Hai suddenly squatted and then grabbed the person's arm with both hands. Then he twisted his body. In the person's extremely surprised eyes, Jiang Hai's body burst out with a huge force. He directly swung the person up and slammed him heavily on the ground. With this swing, the person's arm was officially dislocated. However, Jiang Hai would not let him go easily. He went up and kicked the person's head. This blow was not like the one in the martial arts movies where one blow could knock people out. But it also made him confused. At least, he would not trouble Jiang Hai for the time being. Seeing that these two people were temporarily solved, Jiang Hai also flashed and went to the car. Then he stepped on the accelerator and rushed out of the alley. At this time, the black man who fell on the trash can also got up. He hurriedly ran a few steps and ran out of the alley. He didn't dare to shoot on the street, so he could only watch Jiang Hai's car go away. He immediately reported the situation here to the headset. "Boss, I'm sorry. Miss Gomez was taken away." Hearing the report here, a bodyguard immediately ran to Prawalton, who had already run to the door after hearing the news, and whispered. Hearing his words, Prawalton directly slapped him. Although he could easily dodge, he didn't, and there was no trace of anger in his eyes. This matter was indeed their responsibility. Moreover, Prawalton was not someone they could afford to offend. Looking at the man's silent appearance, Prawalton snorted and said, "Trash. Yes, the person who took Miss Gomez away is a master, and the car he drove is a battle shield if I'm not mistaken." Hearing the word trash, the man didn't refute. Instead he agreed. Then he talked about the news sent by the black man. "Battle shield? Check it for me and see who the car belongs to." Hearing this man's words, Prawalton's eyes had a trace of doubt. For a car like the Battle Shield, in fact, it was not very common in the United States. It was not that Americans could not afford it, but that Americans were not willing to drive such a car. In the United States, successful people basically drove sedans, while young people and rich people drove sports cars. No matter how good the pickup truck was, except for some modified cars, it was also driven by farmers. SUVs, even the best ones, were usually not driven by people. This was different from the domestic car culture. In China, the most important thing was that cars were expensive. The type of car, except for engineering vehicles, was not too important. But in the United States, what kind of car did was very particular. If this person came here to visit the club and also drove an SUV, if this person was not a tiger, then he really liked it. And she just happened to know such a person, and she saw this guy tonight. It can't be that guy. Squinting her eyes, Prawalton's heart, which was originally worried about Gomez's safety, was a little relieved. If it was that guy driving such a car and having such good skills, it would make sense. But when she thought of Selena Gomez's situation now, her eyes couldn't help but narrow again. If this was the case, then it would be troublesome. So she took out her phone, looked at the familiar number on it, and dialed it. But unfortunately, the phone was connected, but no one answered, which made her feel more and more crisis. "Immediately check for me where Jiang Hai lives in New York." Without hanging up the phone, Prawalton said to the bodyguard beside her. After listening to her, the bodyguard nodded, then immediately left and went to the side to make a call. As for Jiang Hai at this time, he did not return to the presidential suite he rented. Of course, he did not hear the phone ring because the phone was in his coat pocket, and his coat had been thrown in the back seat. It had been stuffed into the sofa cushion because of the fight just now. If the car was very quiet at this time, it would be fine, but the situation now was not good. Because after Selena got in the car, although the car was driving, she was almost unconscious. She just subconsciously felt that she was hot, and then she tore her clothes. Coupled with the original smell in the car, it seemed that the poison in her body was triggered faster. When Jiang Hai got in the car and drove out of the alley, she had already taken off all the clothes outside. At this time she was tearing her vest. The two women who came up with Jiang Hai were trying to hold her down, but the effect was not very good. From the rearview mirror, Jiang Hai also saw the situation here and could not help but ask in surprise, "What's wrong with her? She should have been drugged with that kind of drug." With a strange monotonous tone, the girl from India could not help but feel a little puzzled. Living in such places for years, they had long been used to these kinds of things. This kind of thing was not uncommon in nightclubs. That kind of drug. What should we do? Hearing the two women's words, Jiang Hai could not help but be stunned for a moment. There was such a thing? After checking Selena's situation, the girl from South U thought for a moment and said, "It's not a big problem. She should have been drugged with a very high-level drug. It won't make her delirious, so as long as she's satisfied, the poison should be detoxified." "Then I'll have to trouble you. This is my friend. Use your fingers and tongues to help her. I'll pay you later." There was no way to talk about help with these two girls, only benefits. "We may not be able to help her because she was drugged with a very high-level drug. Unless it's done in one go, it will last for a long time." After hesitating for a moment, although dollar was very good, they could not earn it. Then what should we do? Hearing the two women's words, Jiang Hai could not help but panic a little. He still owed them a favor. "Aren't you friends? Yours should be fine." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl from South U said with a smile, "Yeah, your model number, it should be fine." Hearing the girl from South U's words, the third girl also said with a smile, "Don't joke around. We're really friends, not that kind of relationship." Shaking his head, Jiang Hai really did not think about it. She was drugged with a very high-level drug. Although it won't hurt her brain if she stays in this state for a long time, it will still be a great burden on her body. Otherwise she will have to go to the hospital. Hearing that Jiang Hai really did not want to take advantage of her, the girl from South Yu suggested. Chapter 367. No, we can't go to the hospital. But who knew that when she heard about going to the hospital, Selina, who was already in a state of madness, actually sobered up a little and said loudly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai can also understand her concerns. After all, she is a public figure. If she goes to the hospital and is discovered, then it is really hard to explain. If she goes to that kind of club and is drugged, not only will she suffer, but it is also possible that Prawalton, that club, and himself will suffer. But if she doesn't go to the hospital, will she continue to be like this? Jiang Hai can't help but have a headache at this time. There is a good hotel in front, don't hesitate, let's go. Seeing Jiang Hai's somewhat hesitant look, the third sister here thought that Jiang Hai didn't want to let go of this opportunity, so he didn't take her to the hospital. She rolled her eyes. In this case she will help Jiang Hai to get off the donkey. Under her command Jiang Hai came to a motel. As soon as the car was parked, the third sister here had already gone to get a room, leaving the Southern Yu girl and Jiang Hai. She took Selena Gomez in. When they went in they found that the third sister only got a big room. Originally Jiang Hai was still hesitating. He was going to put her in and leave for another room. But just when he threw Selena Gomez on the bed, she suddenly jumped up and hugged Jiang Hai in an instant. Help me. She opened her somewhat blurred eyes. She also heard the conversation between Jiang Hai and the two women just now. She knew that Jiang Hai was the only one who could help her get rid of this annoying feeling. I can't help it. Feeling as if he wants to melt into her body, Jiang Hai said with some hesitation. You can do it, I don't hate you. It's not love, but Jiang Hai knows that this is the truth. The relationship between him and Selena Gomez is at the level of not hating. For Selena Gomez, who must do this now rather than giving herself to others, it is better to give herself to Jiang Hai, who she doesn't hate, and it will be easier to end it. After her voice fell, Selena's mouth had already kissed Jiang Hai's lips. Feeling her passion, Jiang Hai seemed to be in a daze at this moment. Looking at the two people in front of him, the two women who brought them in also smiled and were about to leave. But before they left, Jiang Hai waved his hand and told them not to be in a hurry to leave. While dealing with Selena, Jiang Hai also took out the rest of the money he exchanged. Jiang Hai exchanged a total of $220 bills. He spent about 60 bills tonight, and now had about 140 left. Jiang Hai took them all out and handed them to the two women. The two women didn't refuse. Although they didn't come out for Jiang Hai's money, if Jiang Hai wanted to give them money, they wouldn't refuse. After leaving the key to Jiang Hai, they left the room, locked the door and paid the room fee at the same time. It had to be admitted that sometimes Jiang Hai often found people who were more loyal. After the door was locked, Selena Gomez's last trace of rationality disappeared. A big battle began in this small hotel just like that. It was already 11 o'clock at night when they entered. It wasn't until 3 o'clock in the morning when the sun rose that they stopped and gradually fell asleep. They didn't know how long they slept. When Jiang Hai felt that someone was looking at him, he woke up from his sleep. As soon as he woke up and opened his eyes, he saw a pair of big eyes looking at him. The owner of these eyes was none other than Selena Gomez, who had an ambiguous relationship with him last night. Seeing Jiang Hai look over, Selena Gomez's face couldn't help but flash a trace of awkwardness and blush. Good morning. Looking at her, Jiang Hai felt that he should say something, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he regretted it. Good morning? What kind of greeting is this? Is this the first thing two people want to say when they get up in the morning? Hey, good morning. Sure enough, hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also smiled and then replied. Then the two of them fell silent again. Neither of them knew what to say. After a while, Selena Gomez pulled the blanket over herself and sat up. Although she had seen everything she wanted to see last night, she was not going to expose herself this morning. I have to go back to practice singing. Listening to her words, Jiang Hai also sat up. Oh, okay. After saying softly, Selena picked up the clothes on the ground with Jiang Hai on her back and put them on. Call me when you have time, I'm leaving first. Standing at the door again, Selena Gomez glanced at Jiang Hai behind her and then said softly. Now the relationship between the two is indeed a bit. Looking at Selena Gomez, who closed the door and left, Jiang Hai hesitated and quickly put on his clothes. At this time he always felt that he should show off a little, so he still chased out. Fortunately, the money for the room had been paid by the two girls last night, so Jiang Hai just returned the key and chased out. When he went downstairs, Selena Gomez had not yet walked out of the parking lot, and Jiang Hai had already started the engine. "Where are you going? Let me give you a ride." Opening the door of the passenger seat, Jiang Hai looked at her seriously and said, "No need, I'll just take a taxi back." But hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez shook her head and said. Now she and Jiang Hai were really embarrassed. If the two of them were to stay in the same car, no one knew if the atmosphere would freeze. "Come on in, I have nothing to do." However, Jiang Hai is not a person who gives up easily. He shook his head and said to Selena Gomez. Hearing Jiang Hai's firm words, Selena bit her lip and nodded. She went to the passenger seat, fastened her seat belt, and the two set off. "Where are you going?" Looking at Selena Gomez beside him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. In fact, he knows that it is unlikely for him and her to be together. Let's not talk about other things. The most important thing is that the life Jiang Hai pursues is probably not what she likes. You know, she is a star, a big star. Although she is not a superstar, she is not inferior. It is not an exaggeration to say that she is an A-list star. She is a person who lives in the spotlight. Jiang Hai can't allow his woman to be busy outside all day and only treat him and his home as a place to relax. Jiang Hai doesn't like to be noticed by too many people. Compared with that kind of life, he prefers his current life. But after all, something did happen between him and Selena last night, so it's hard to say. "I'm going to the studio in Brooklyn." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also said softly, "Okay, I'll turn on the navigation." Jiang Hai can't even understand Boston. Oh no, he can't even understand Winthrop, let alone New York. Fortunately, human beings are smart enough to invent navigation, so Jiang Hai won't go in circles. Following the navigation, Jiang Hai soon drove out of the Manhattan area and came to the Brooklyn Bridge. There are three very famous bridges in New York connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn, namely the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and the Williamsburg Bridge. The Statue of Liberty can be seen on the bridge, which is also a view here. Originally, on the bridge the traffic flow is very large. If there is a traffic accident, there will be a traffic jam. Just like today, Jiang Hai and the others just got on the bridge and they were blocked, and the traffic seemed to be tight. Looking at the motionless traffic in the distance, Jiang Hai and Selena Gomez were not in a hurry, but the atmosphere between the two was indeed a bit awkward, because since the navigation was turned on, there was only the sound of the navigation in the whole car. "That, can I call you Selena?" After hesitating, Jiang Hai felt that he should say something. "Of course we're friends, right?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena spoke first. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and she couldn't help but hesitate. If they were friends, then what happened last night would be hard to say. "Oh, we have seen each other many times." Jiang Hai naturally heard the hesitation in her words, but he could only force himself not to hear it and continue to talk to her. At the same time, he seemed to be recalling the number of times he had seen her. "Well, there are many times. The first time I saw you was because you stood up for me." Hearing Jiang Hai talk about the past, Selena also chuckled, as if recalling the scene when she first met Jiang Hai. "At that time I didn't know you. I was just unhappy with Justin Bieber." With a shrug, Jiang Hai naturally knew what she meant by standing up for him. It was nothing more than the problem with Justin Bieber. "Haha, there are many people who are unhappy with him, but you are the first one who can make him so depressed, that scumbag." Shaking her head, Selena Gomez was interested in Jiang Hai because of her ex-boyfriend. Hey, who hasn't fallen in love with a few wrong people in their life? You'll get used to it. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also said with a smile, "You fell in love before? Aren't you married?" Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena Gomez also had some understanding of Jiang Hai. It seemed that Jiang Hai's marriage was a wrong marriage. Two people who did not love each other could only suffer together. "I'm an adult, I must have had friends before." Looking at Selena, Jiang Hai waved his hand and said, "Have you fallen in love with the wrong person before? Tell me about it." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena was also interested. Chapter 368. Do you really want to hear it? Looking at Selena, who was originally a little lifeless, suddenly so interested in his past, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He thought to himself, why is this guy so curious? In fact, Jiang Hai didn't have any love stories from his past. After he graduated from university, he really didn't have a girlfriend because he was a homebody and had to work. Later, when his conditions were better and he wanted to make friends, his parents had a series of accidents. He didn't have time to be with them. Then he got married to Chili in a daze. Everyone knew what happened after that. So, speaking of which, Jiang Hai really didn't seem to have a girlfriend. What he said just now was, firstly to save face for himself and secondly to comfort Selena, who knew that she would be interested. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was a little confused. As he asked, his mind spun quickly. Yeah, tell me about it. We're friends. Friends should talk about things that friends should talk about. At this time, Selena looked at Jiang Hai and said with a serious face. For the time being, she put last night's unhappiness aside. Then okay, I'll tell you. Looking at Selena's eager look, Jiang Hai also organized his words. I remember that a long time ago I fell in love with a girl. We knew each other and fell in love. When we kissed for the first time, just a second before we kissed, she suddenly said, "Wait a minute." Jiang Hai looked at her serious expression and slowly told the story. When she heard Jiang Hai's words, Selena also looked at Jiang Hai. She also didn't understand why the girl wanted to stop. I was very puzzled at that time. I thought to myself, if you don't want to, you can push me away. What's the meaning of, wait a minute? Just when I was puzzled, she took out 3 pieces of candy from her pocket. They were hard candies that children like to eat. One was strawberry flavored, one was apple, and one was lychee flavored. Then she asked me which one I liked. I said I pointed at the lychee flavored one. Before I could ask her why, she ate the candy and then pulled my neck. We kissed just like that. The whole time there was the taste of lychee. Seeing that she listened seriously, Jiang Hai also slowly said, "What does this mean?" Hearing Jiang Hai's explanation, Selena couldn't help but interrupt him and asked with some doubts. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai nodded and said, "Yes, I was also very puzzled. After we kissed, I asked her what she meant. She told me that life is so long, and she didn't have the confidence to accompany me forever. She could only let me remember that my favorite lychee-flavored food was the taste of her kiss. In the future, whenever I eat lychee-flavored food, I will think of her." Wow, that's a good idea. Hearing Jiang Hai's explanation, Selena also said with a serious face, "Yes." But after graduating from university, she went to another city and we separated. Later, I got married and gradually lost contact with her. My married life wasn't happy, so time couldn't settle down. Finally, one day, I earned the startup capital and was ready to leave the country. Before I left, I couldn't suppress the feelings in my heart anymore. I decided to look for her. Looking at the sky outside, Jiang Hai slowly said without moving, "Yes, you should look for her. This is a great love. Did you find her?" Looking at Jiang Hai's yearning expression, Selena seemed to be immersed in it, but if you looked at her eyes, you would find that she was a little evasive. Although she didn't like Jiang Hai, she was still awake in this man's arms this morning. Now she was listening to this man's story of his past, and it was quite romantic. Deep in her heart, there were indeed some ripples. I found a lot of people and asked a lot about her. After a long time I found some news. It said that after graduation she went to another city and found a good job. After working for a few years, she quit her job and opened a candy store. After working hard, she slowly accumulated some wealth. I also found the location of the candy store. That day, I specially changed into my favorite clothes, bought flowers and rushed to her store. I finally found her. Looking at the clouds in the sky, Jiang Hai didn't move, as if he was afraid that if he moved too much, tears would fall down his face. Selena also looked at Jiang Hai motionlessly. She wanted to know the end of Jiang Hai's story. When I saw her, the first thing I said was, "Do you still remember the taste of lychee candy?" She told me with tears in her eyes that she had never forgotten the taste of lychee candy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have publicized the store. I was suddenly moved to tears. I then asked her, "Can we start over?" But she shook her head. "Although we loved each other, we can't go back." When Jiang Hai said this, Selena's eyes were already red, but the result made her sigh in relief. "Sorry, I didn't know the end of the story would be like this." Looking at Jiang Hai, who had been looking at the sky at a 45-degree angle, Selena Gomez whispered. She really didn't think that Jiang Hai would have such an unforgettable love. But at this moment, Jiang Hai interrupted her, shook his head and said, "No, you don't have to apologize. Although she didn't accept me, I'm not sad at all." "You're not sad because you see her happy?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena suddenly felt sorry for Jiang Hai. Feeling Selena's gaze, Jiang Hai turned his eyes towards her. In an instant, 2 bright eyes appeared in Selena's eyes. She originally thought that Jiang Hai was holding back his tears, but now it seems that there aren't even a single tear in his eyes. Just when she was a little confused, Jiang Hai's voice also came. "No, I'm really not sad at all because I made this story up." It seems like it's going to rain. You bastard. After Jiang Hai finished speaking, Selena went up and punched Jiang Hai's arm heavily. This bastard, how dare he lie to me? What touching romantic love story, this guy actually made it up. She originally thought that he was looking at the sky at a 45-degree angle to hold back his tears, but who knew that he was actually looking at the dark clouds in the sky? This damn guy. Hey, you're killing me. Looking at Selena punching his arm, Jiang Hai had no other choice but to smile bitterly. He really did make it up. There was no sincerity in it at all. He had never been a person who tortured himself. What love story do you think you're watching, a Korean drama? Jiang Hai was not interested in acting in Korean films. Japanese films were not bad, especially the SW series. He was still very interested. Cough, how could an ordinary person understand the sorrow of an old driver? You bastard, I thought I really poked at your sore spot. Damn it. Looking at Jiang Hai's mischievous smile, Selena was really angry. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough strength to fight back. She hit Jiang Hai until her hand hurt, but nothing happened to Jiang Hai. In the end, he could only look at her angrily. Okay, I admit it. I'm actually a stinky loser. What girlfriend? I don't exist. If it wasn't because of the accident at home, I might still be a single dog now. Looking at her angry look, Jiang Hai also laughed at himself. He didn't care about self-deprecating, but now it seemed that Selena's mood was much better. At this time, the car also began to move slowly, heading to the other side of the bridge. But at this time, the atmosphere in the car was not as dignified as before. Single dog, okay, in fact, I'm also a single dog now. Hearing Jiang Hai's adjective, Selena nodded and said speechlessly. Looking at the dark clouds in the sky, sometimes she really feels a little lonely. I'll tell you a way, an old dog's way to solve the problem of being single. Seeing that her aura was about to become low again, Jiang Hai couldn't help laughing and then said to her. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, she looked at him curiously again. If you feel lonely, you can find a small room, turn off the light and play a horror movie. Looking at Selena, Jiang Hai said seriously. But his words made Selena somewhat puzzled. What? Won't you be afraid? Looking at Jiang Hai's serious look, Selena asked with a serious face. I'm afraid, so in a while, you will feel that you are not alone in this room. Sure enough, as soon as Jiang Hai finished his answer, Selena was full of energy again, waving her small fists and punching Jiang Hai. Of course, she also knew that Jiang Hai was taking a taxi now, so when she hit Jiang Hai, she hit Jiang Hai's thigh. When she felt the pain in her hand, Selena couldn't help but look at Jiang Hai with a reproachful look and couldn't help but laugh. Why didn't I realize that your mouth is so sweet? Tell me you used this method to deceive a lot of women. Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena said with a serious face. From a woman's perspective, a sense of humor is one of the criteria to measure a man. Of course, this criterion has to be ranked after appearance, height, wealth, and so on, but it is also one of the criteria. Jiang Hai, although not handsome, is not too ugly. He is more than 1.9 meters tall, which is not bad. She followed Prawalton to discuss business with Jiang Hai, so she naturally knows that Jiang Hai's wealth is quite high. So in this case, Jiang Hai's sense of humor made her feel like she discovered a new world. Hey, don't say that, I'm still a C-man. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said with a shy face. Don't think that I don't know. Let's not talk about the distant past. Let's talk about yesterday. When I got in the car, there were 2 girls in it. Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena said provocatively. Hey, then I just went to talk to them about life and ideals. It doesn't count. Waving his hand, Jiang Hai said casually. They don't count? Okay, I didn't see it with my own eyes. You can still deny it, but what about me? Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena patted Jiang Hai's arm and stared at Jiang Hai with her big eyes with a serious face, which made Jiang Hai a little embarrassed. Hey, you took advantage of me and you still have the nerve to ask me. You're not married yet. Your shamelessness really makes people hate you. I really want to kick you out of the car. Hearing Jiang Hai say this, Selena was so angry that she laughed. She wanted to hit him, but her hands hurt so much that she could only say this with hatred. If you kick me out, no one will drive. Jiang Hai waved his hand and laughed. No one will drive? Do you think I don't have a driver's license? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena exploded again. I'm not saying that you don't know how to drive, I'm saying that you're short. He glanced at Selena's height. In fact, Selena wasn't tall. Justin Bieber, that dwarf, was like an American version of a certain someone. He could jump up and punch Yao Ming's ankle. Even with this height, he was half a head taller than Selena. Her height of 1.65 meters was just right. Hey, you're digging your own grave. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selina finally couldn't hold it in anymore and pounced on Jiang Hai. Chapter 369. Then I'm leaving. Remember to call me, if you have time. After getting out of the car, Selena Gomez glanced at Jiang Hai, who also got out of the car and stood in front of the car looking at her. She hesitated for a moment and spoke. After all, after what happened last night, the relationship between the two was not as casual as before. In addition, when they drove here, the two had some communication, so the two didn't feel so unfamiliar. Of course. Hearing Selena's words, Jiang Hai nodded immediately. He naturally wouldn't refuse this suggestion. Then I'm leaving. Selena was very sure that she had exchanged phone numbers with Jiang Hai, so after hearing Jiang Hai's straightforward answer without any hesitation, her little face couldn't help but chuckle. She then turned her head and walked into her studio. Watching her figure slowly disappear, Jiang Hai, who was leaning against the car, couldn't help but curl his lips. It seemed that he didn't know what to do in the future. Now he could only take one step at a time. Watching Selena's back disappear, Jiang Hai stretched his body and returned to the driver's seat. He then drove the car away from here. But he didn't notice that at this time, on the first floor and the second floor of the studio, a pair of eyes were staring at him. On the first floor was Selena Gomez, who had just walked in, and on the second floor was a guy named Anton Slavsky, but not many people in Europe and the United States knew his name. His stage name was ZDD. A well-known music producer and DJ in the United States, he was very famous in the circle. And now Selena Gomez was working with him. Of course, he had other thoughts. As for Selena Gomez, who was downstairs watching Jiang Hai leave, she didn't know what to say. She knew that Jiang Hai was not a good home, but women always had a different feeling for people who had sex with them. This was what Selena Gomez was struggling with at this time. At that moment, the phone that she had set to silent yesterday vibrated again. Looking at the name on the screen, she hesitated for a moment before picking it up. She listened to the concerned and gentle words on the other end of the phone, but her face remained expressionless. I'm sorry, I don't think I misunderstood anything. Let's not meet again in the future because I already have someone I like. Facing the gentle female voice on the other side of the phone, Selena Gomez didn't want what happened last night to happen again. So she said stiffly to the person. After saying that, she directly hung up the phone and put the person on the blacklist. She didn't know if the person would take revenge on her after she said that, but when she thought of Jiang Hai, the original sense of crisis gradually disappeared. Because she knew that when she was desperate, there was still a man she could rely on. However, Jiang Hai didn't know this now. After he left here, he was ready to go back to his hotel to sleep. Because he really felt that there was nothing fun to do. Although the place last night was interesting. But this time, Jiang Hai didn't want to go again for the time being. Sometimes it wasn't a good choice to stay in an overly excited state. Recently, he felt that he seemed to have more and more needs in that area, and it was getting higher and higher. This made him a little worried. There was no land that could be plowed, only cows that were tired to death. Although he now has twice the physical fitness of a human being, if he always drags 2 or 3 people, he will be finished sooner or later. It's better to be careful. As the world's largest city, traffic jams are normal. When Jiang Hai returned to the Manhattan area, his car was stuck again. When he was bored, he couldn't help but think of Selena Gomez's words, saying that he would call her. At the same time, he was surprised. It seems that he hasn't played with his mobile phone for a long time. Hey, where's my phone? Touching his trouser pocket, Jiang Hai muttered strangely. Looking around, he found that his coat was about to be stuffed under the back seat at this time. Jiang Hai couldn't help but mutter. Fortunately, his coat was not a suit, but an ordinary outdoor sportswear. He didn't need to worry about it getting dirty. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome. He reached over and pulled the coat over. Sure enough, Jiang Hai's mobile phone was in the coat. But at this time, the battery of the mobile phone had already been used up. Although Jiang Hai has a lot of money, he doesn't care much about mobile phones. So now he only uses the lowest level phone in the United States, Fruit 6 Plus. As mentioned before, this phone is really worthless in the United States. Of course, if you buy it back in China, it is still worth some money. It is worth about 3,000 yuan, which is about 1,000 yuan cheaper. But here in the United States, as long as you use the phone operator's number here, this thing is almost the same as giving it to you for free. To be honest, the apps in Jiang Hai's mobile phone are much more valuable than the phone itself. Because you can't jailbreak here, you will be caught playing pirated games. All the games, Jiang Hai pays for them. This phone's standby time is not too long. Now that it is turned off, it naturally has no battery. After plugging in the charger, not long after, Jiang Hai turned on the phone again. But just as he turned it on, a series of messages came in. Among them there are more than 30 missed calls. It is estimated that the last trace of battery of this phone was used up by these calls. One of them is from Moses Adams and another is from Daliana. Other than that, there is only one number, Prawalton. Looking at these numbers, Jiang Hai can't help but slap his forehead. He just remembered that Selena Gomez went with Prawalton yesterday. It seems that this woman is waiting anxiously. This also made Jiang Hai feel a little embarrassed. After hesitating, he called Daliana first. Daliana really has nothing to do. She just asked about Jiang Hai's situation. Jiang Hai naturally won't tell her where he went last night, so he just laughed it off. Then he called Moses Adams and learned that the town's contract has basically been finalized. When Jiang Hai comes back to sign the transfer, the construction will begin. The final share is almost the same as the last negotiation. Jiang Hai can't help but shake his fist. This is the most important person. After making an appointment with Moses Adams that he will go back tomorrow, Jiang Hai called Prawalton. The phone rang only once before it was picked up. You finally appeared, Jiang Hai. I thought you would hide for a lifetime. As soon as the phone was connected, Prawalton on the other side of the phone said coldly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. What does she mean by hiding for a lifetime? My phone ran out of battery last night. I just charged it now. I saw you make so many calls. Is there a problem with the beef? Looking at Prawalton, Jiang Hai asked curiously. The beef is fine, but there seems to be some problems between us. I don't know where you were last night. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton on the other side of the phone took a deep breath. Her words were like gunpowder. Last night? Where was I last night? Didn't you see me? If you have something to say, just say it. Hearing the strong hostility in her words, Jiang Hai was not so good-tempered. The two said that they were partners, but in fact the relationship between the two was not particularly close. Because Prawalton always had the air of a monarch. This is what Jiang Hai doesn't like. Many men in the north have chauvinism, which is male chauvinism. Although Jiang Hai is not too serious because of his original living habits, this kind of tone still makes him very uncomfortable. You still have a reason. Where did you take Selena? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton on the other side of the phone also said loudly. You still have the nerve to ask me? You were with Selena. How could you let her be drugged? Listening to Prawalton's questioning, Jiang Hai was a little embarrassed for a moment, but his reaction was not slow. He immediately said to her loudly. That's because, sure, we can't explain it over the phone. Let's meet. Prawalton listened to Jiang Hai's words and couldn't help but take a deep breath. She and Jiang Hai are partners, so she can't easily fall out with him. Now, Jiang Hai's beef has quickly occupied a considerable share in the upper class, so although Jiang Hai stole her, she can't easily fall out with Jiang Hai. Most importantly, nothing happened between her and Selena Gomez. Yes, the person who called Selena Gomez just now was no one else but her. And for Selena Gomez's words, she was naturally burning with anger. She knew that the person Selena said she fell in love with was very likely Jiang Hai. Whether it was true or not, she had no time to think at this time. Now, she just wanted to see Jiang Hai and destroy his relationship with Selena. Sometimes, women really go crazy for love. If not for Prawalton's many years of capital habits as a businesswoman, she might have already terminated the beef sales contract with Jiang Hai. Most importantly, she couldn't stand her ground. She couldn't possibly say that she was the one who drugged Selena. Okay, where do you want to meet? Although he didn't know why this woman was looking for him, Jiang Hai still decided to meet her. He was also very curious. Why did this woman act as if she had eaten gunpowder? Moreover, Jiang Hai was also very confused. Selena Gomez had always been with her. How did she get drugged? Jiang Hai probably couldn't figure it out even if he cracked his head. This Prawalton was actually a big problem. Now that he heard that she wanted to meet him, Jiang Hai agreed. Come to my home, Atlantic City. Chapter 370. It should be here. While driving according to the navigation, Jiang Hai looked at the city in front of him. To be honest, this city is more prosperous than Winthrop or even Boston, but Jiang Hai has almost never heard of this place. But after entering the city, Jiang Hai also looked up the city on the internet. As a result, he found that this city is really famous. Atlantic City is located in New Jersey. Although it is across the state, it is not far from New York. This city is only 92 kilometers away from Philadelphia, the birthplace of the United States, and only 160 kilometers away from New York. The city was founded in 1854 and the railway was built in 1898. The city developed very quickly, but it was not a place of heavy or light industry. The reason why it is so famous is mainly because it is the best tourist and leisure city. Before Las Vegas, Atlantic City was the largest gambling city in the United States. In 1976, the first legal casino in the United States was actually opened here. Because of the legalization of gambling, this city became the most important city in the United States almost overnight. But after the establishment of Las Vegas, its scenery was not as dazzling as before. However, with the appearance of the Atlantic Empire in an American TV series, this city rose again and became the largest gambling city on the East Coast. It is not just a matter of words. Even if it is not as good as Leviscus, it can still be ranked in the world. Jiang Hai has never been to Leviscus, so when he first entered the city and found that there were casinos everywhere, he was really curious, but it stopped at curiosity. Jiang Hai used to be a prostitute and he is still a prostitute now. He knows that alcohol and sex are mainly harmful to the body, and gambling and drugs can ruin a person's family. Jiang Hai's self-control is very strong. He usually doesn't gamble. Even when he goes home for the new year, he plays small mahjong and the like. 1 yuan or 2 yuan bets, the winning and losing of a night is not enough for a red card, so this is just playing. Jiang Hai won't play casually. But this doesn't stop his curiosity. While looking at the unique buildings of this city, Jiang Hai went to the address Prawalton sent him. Not long after, a manor with a large area appeared in front of him. While looking at the manor, Jiang Hai drove forward. Sure enough, the number that Jiang Hai was looking for was posted on the door of the manor. TSK really rich. Looking at the huge manor in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but click his tongue. He pressed the doorbell and reported his name. Not long after, a pair of young women in maid outfits walked out of the manor. After respectfully opening the door, an exclusive driver went to help Jiang Hai park the car, and the person on the other side led Jiang Hai into the manor in front of him. Jiang Hai walked and looked here together. He was really curious. This manor, in fact, is naturally not as big as Jiang Hai's manor, but it is much bigger than Elder Zhang's manor. Just for living, it has to be said that this manor is really luxurious. This manor covers an area of about 3 acres. 1 acre is 15 acres, and 1 acre is 666 square meters. In other words, this manor is 30,000 square meters. In front of them was a huge green garden path made up of small trees and flowers. It was like a maze in the movies with one on each side. At the end of the path in the middle, there was a small flower bed with a fountain in the middle. Behind the fountain is a huge Western-style 3-story villa. This villa is completely different from Jiang Hai's small villa. This house is at least 5 times bigger than Jiang Hai's house. It looks really scary just standing there. Jiang Hai used to know that Prawalton is rich. Even without the Walmart behind it, this woman will still have a lot of money. But he didn't expect that this woman is not only rich, but also willing to spend so much money. According to Jiang Hai's estimation, this manor alone is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In that case, it wasn't too expensive to spend 200 million yuan on such a large manor. Mr. Jiang, this way please. The maid leading the way naturally knows that Jiang Hai is looking around, but she doesn't care. As if she didn't see it, she led Jiang Hai to the front of the villa, opened the door, and motioned for Jiang Hai to follow her in. Jiang Hai also smiled and followed her in. As soon as he entered the villa, Jiang Hai's heart couldn't help but skip half a beat. From the outside, this manor was already extremely luxurious, but from the inside, this villa's interior decoration was dozens of streets ahead of his own. In fact, Jiang Hai has always thought that the decoration of his manor is good. After all, he spent millions of dollars on it. But compared with Prawalton's villa, it is really a far cry. As soon as he entered the villa, the first thing that caught Jiang Hai's eyes was a huge hall. The hall is 3 stories high, which is to say this hall is directly connected to the top of the villa. The roof of the hall is made of one-way glass, and the sunlight outside can easily shine in, making the whole hall very bright. The most eye-catching thing is a huge chandelier hanging in the air. The huge chandelier is made of tens of thousands of crystal balls. Needless to say, when it is turned on, how bright it will be. In the middle of the hall, there is a classic leather sofa, a handmade Persian carpet, and the wall lamps on the wall are all golden. Although he doesn't know if they are really made of gold or just plated, at least they are not brass. The strong Western-style architecture really left a deep impression on Jiang Hai. He has to admit that in terms of taste, she is indeed better than him. And it seems that she is more willing to spend money, although he doesn't know much about it. But according to the price that Jiang Hai learned when he renovated his house, This hall alone will cost millions of dollars. While Jiang Hai is looking at this place in the middle of the hall, a group of women are sitting in the distance watching Jiang Hai walk in. Following their gazes, Jiang Hai also looked at them. Seeing this, Jiang Hai can't help but be a little surprised, because Jiang Hai has seen these people before. The woman sitting in the middle is none other than Prawalton. At this time she has neatly combed her hair into a circle, and Jiang Hai doesn't know what it is called. She is wearing pajamas made of black gauze. The pajamas are not thin but it is faintly transparent. With Jiang Hai's eyesight he can see that this woman is wearing nothing inside. This makes Jiang Hai feel a little embarrassed. At the same time he thinks maliciously in his heart, is she here to ask me to push her down? But obviously he thinks too much because at this time, Prawalton is looking at Jiang Hai with a murderous look in her eyes. Her eyes are a little red because she didn't sleep all night, which is even more frightening. Her hand holding the wine glass is also secretly tightening. She is afraid that she will lose control and throw the wine glass at this damn Jiang Hai. Prawalton has such an expression, and the people around her are naturally the same. At this time the people beside her are not unfamiliar to Jiang Hai. They are the 5 women who accompanied her last night. But at this time these women are wearing very sexy clothes, almost nothing is covered except for the important parts, and the most important parts are tightly wrapped. Jiang Hai is not particularly unfamiliar with this kind of clothes, because Feng Yunshan and the others also brought this type of clothes. At this time, these 5 women are also glaring at Jiang Hai, which makes Jiang Hai a little confused. He doesn't seem to have provoked them. You are here. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Prawalton said faintly. Yeah, I don't know why you called me over. Under the guidance of the woman, Jiang Hai sat opposite Prawalton and asked curiously. He really didn't understand what she meant. This Li Zixuan Korean 1. 78 meters tall, 23 years old, still c. 3 measurements. Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton pulled the Asian woman beside her and said with a serious face. Wait, what do you mean by this? Looking at Prawalton's hand, constantly rubbing the Asian woman's body, Jiang Hai couldn't help but wave his hand. What does she mean? Why can't Jiang Hai understand? As long as you leave Selena Gomez, she is yours, you can do whatever you want. After Prawalton finished speaking, she pushed her to Jiang Hai's side. The woman didn't think that she would be thrown over like this. She was shocked for a while. Her body tilted and she fell on Jiang Hai's body. This is also Jiang Hai's fault. He saw that the woman was about to fall, so he subconsciously wanted to catch her, but when he heard Prawalton's words, Jiang Hai's figure couldn't help but stagnate. For a while he didn't know whether he should catch her or not. Just as he was in a dilemma, the woman had fallen into his arms. Feeling this tall and unusually plump figure, Jiang Hai was stunned this time. What's going on? What's going on? Why can't I figure it out? One is not enough. This is Colleen Pavlovich from Croatia, a former flight attendant, 22 years old, doesn't have that kind of experience. 75 meters tall. She's also for you. Looking at Jiang Hai's panicked face, but he didn't agree, Prawalton pulled up another woman and threw her into Jiang Hai's arms. Hearing Prawalton's words, Jiang Hai felt ridiculous, and the 2 women felt a little unbelievable. Their eyes were full of loneliness but they didn't resist. Their bodies were stiff, lying on Jiang Hai's body, motionless, waiting for the final decision. Chapter 371. Not enough. This is Martina, she is from Argentina, this is also for you. This is Fail from Australia, this is also for you. This is Isabel from France, this is also for you. Looking at Jiang Hai's silent look, Prawalton was really going crazy. She threw the wine glass in her hand, then pulled the other 3 girls and pushed them one by one to Jiang Hai. It was fine when she pushed the first 2 girls, but when she pushed the third one she obviously used too much strength. This girl was not ready, or rather the 5 girls were not ready at this time. When she ran forward, she accidentally stepped on the glass that Prawalton had just broken. In an instant, a wound appeared on her foot. Seeing this, Jiang Hai, who was still a little confused, immediately pushed the 4 beauties away, then pulled the 5th girl, put her on the sofa and checked the wound on her foot. Although the glass cut into her flesh, it was not deep. After Jiang Hai pulled out the glass, he picked up the paper next to her and let her press on it. As for Prawalton, she was also a little confused at this time. Looking at the bleeding girl, she subconsciously wanted to go forward, but after hesitating, she stopped and looked at Jiang Hai with a gloomy face. Are you crazy? Are you sick? You called me here just to say this? Looking at the tears in the girl's eyes, plus Prawalton's words just now, Jiang Hai couldn't help but stand up and said sternly. Yes, I'm crazy, I'm sick, do you know how much I love Selena? But you secretly took advantage of her and stole her heart, you know how much I hate you, you bastard. Looking at Jiang Hai, Prawalton also recovered from the shock just now and shouted at Jiang Hai loudly. Love my ass, you're a girl, what love do you have? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but say loudly. What's wrong with women? Can't a woman love another woman? At least I'm better than you stinky men. Other than using your power to force women, what else can you do? You're also a stinky man. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton jumped and cursed at Jiang Hai like a ferocious beast that had been stabbed in the ribs. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was really speechless for a moment because the law in the United States allowed same-sex relationships. Marriage was allowed, let alone friendship. In fact, it was not only in the United States now, such a trend was gradually spreading in China. It was just that most people still found it difficult to accept this. Jiang Hai was also a traditional person, at least his way of thinking was very traditional, so he really didn't know what to say. After all, they were not in China but in the United States. Here they were legal. Crazy. Looking at the crazy Prawalton, Jiang Hai hesitated and cursed. In fact, he had long felt that Prawalton had some problems, but he didn't think about it that way. Now it seemed that she should be the legendary lesbian, but after last night's incident, he found that Selena seemed to be quite normal. Combined with the fact that she had taken Selena and the others to the club last night, Jiang Hai seemed to understand something. It seemed that this was a melodramatic plot, but the original brainless second-generation characters had become Prawalton. In this way, Selena said that her heart was with him. It was probably that she wanted him to help her block a shot. What made Jiang Hai most depressed was that it was really difficult for him to dodge this shot. After all, last night he did have some ambiguous things with Selena, which made it difficult for Jiang Hai to say some things. So he could only curse and turn around to leave, but at this moment, Prawalton ran over and hugged Jiang Hai from behind. Feeling her body, Jiang Hai couldn't help but stop for a moment. I beg you, you can live without her, but I can't. If you need, I can help you solve it. Really, I have a lot of beautiful women here. If it's not enough, I can help you find them all over the world. Please, give Selena back to me. Seeing that Jiang Hai was about to leave, Prawalton finally couldn't take it anymore. She hugged Jiang Hai's waist and said loudly. She knew that in front of Jiang Hai her most powerful card was useless because Jiang Hai was a jerk. Jiang Hai was quite a jerk. Jiang Hai wasn't short of money. If he didn't take into account his family's money, Jiang Hai was much richer than her. Jiang Hai could take out at least $1 billion. Secondly, although Jiang Hai's beef was his lifeline, the market for his beef had opened up. Even if he didn't want it, there would be people who would fight for it. Zhang Dihai wouldn't let go of such an opportunity, let alone others. Jiang Hai didn't buy it with money, let alone force. So Prawalton really didn't know what to do now. She had no other choice but to cry and complain. Jiang Hai stood there speechless. What's going on? Why am I so unlucky? Since he had decided to help Selena, Jiang Hai wouldn't go back on his words. But what about Prawalton now? To be honest, Jiang Hai really didn't want to lose Prawalton as an ally. First, Prawalton itself represented the world's largest supermarket brand, Walmart. The sales of his beef in the United States mainly depended on them. Second, their brand and group could save him a lot of trouble. Jiang Hai's beef was good. In fact, as long as someone asked around, they could find out where Jiang Hai was. The reason why Jiang Hai could still live so freely and didn't have to deal with those troubles in the business world was because of two reasons. First, it was because of the quality of his beef. Second, it was also because of the Walmart group. When others inquired about the cooperation between Jiang Hai and the Walmart group, some people who weren't strong enough would automatically withdraw, which saved Jiang Hai a lot of trouble. However, if these business matters were involved in personal affairs, Jiang Hai would be a little conflicted. On the one hand, he didn't want to lose Prawalton as an ally. On the other hand, he had decided to help Selena. If he betrayed her now, it was really not good. Most importantly, he wasn't a fake boyfriend. Something that shouldn't have happened last night made Jiang Hai very conflicted. Although Jiang Hai's character was very decisive when he was alone, he was a little overwhelmed when it came to these things. Indecisive. These 4 words were really good to describe him, especially in the aspect of relationships. Just when Jiang Hai was thinking about whether to tell Prawalton that he just took advantage of her and didn't confirm their relationship, or pull her hand away and stride away, Prawalton made a new move. I understand. Are you embarrassed? It's okay. I'll help you. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't speak, Prawalton directly put her hand into Jiang Hai's pants. Before Jiang Hai could pull her hand away, she had already pulled down Jiang Hai's pants. In an instant, something that shouldn't be there appeared here. Seeing this scene, everyone in the house was stunned. It was because of Prawalton. In this huge villa, there was not a single man, not even a male animal, let alone a man. There were a few dogs in the backyard and they were all female. The bodyguards, drivers, gardeners and cooks of the manor were all female. Since the establishment of the manor, this was the first time such a thing had appeared here. Including the 5 girls who still had some numbness at this time, their faces were also sluggish, looking at Jiang Hai blankly. "What are you doing? Don't be crazy. Selena and I. Something did happen between us, but it hasn't progressed to that point yet. Okay, I have to go. I have to go back and sign the contract." Feeling that his lower body was cold, Jiang Hai was startled. He immediately broke free from Prawalton's hand, then jumped away and pulled up his pants again. Now he had to make it clear to Prawalton, because who knew what this woman would do next? Of course he didn't say it so firmly, because he didn't want to let Selena Gomez down. After all, he did have a relationship with her and she wanted to use him to get rid of Prawalton. This was also what Jiang Hai wanted to see. A woman who had a relationship with him being coveted by others all day long. He was not happy in his heart, even if this person was a woman. So although Jiang Hai said it, his words were somewhat ambiguous. After that, Jiang Hai didn't care about Prawalton anymore, and directly ran out of the manor. If it was not necessary, he was not going to come back in the future. After listening to Jiang Hai's words, Prawalton's eyes, which had been a little desperate, recovered. "It hasn't reached that point yet? That is to say, I still have a chance. I have to think of a way to make Selena completely give up on this guy." Looking at Jiang Hai running away, Prawalton whispered. As soon as she looked back, she just saw the 5 girls sitting on the sofa in the distance, and the corners of her mouth slowly curled up. She thought that she should have thought of a good idea. What is the most taboo between men and women? Betrayal. There was an old saying in Wuxia, to catch a thief you have to get the dirt, to catch an adulterer you have to catch both of them. If Selena saw Jiang Hai with another woman, she would probably be disappointed in Jiang Hai, disappointed in men. At that time, it would be the easiest time for him to get his hands on her. Chapter 372. I'm finally back. Lying on the sofa in her home, Feng Yunshin said with a happy face. Even if they took a first-class plane back, it still made her a little depressed. Flying is really not a fun thing. In fact, whether it's by car, train, plane, or ship, it's actually very tiring. However, it was true that first-class cabins and the like could rest better. Sister Chen, don't you want to pack up? Looking at Feng Yunshin, who was lying directly on the sofa without any image, Ai Xiaoxi couldn't help but sigh. She looked at her sister with some hesitation and asked speechlessly. Xiaoxi, don't worry about this anymore. You've been on the plane for more than 10 hours. Aren't you tired? Waving her hand, Feng Yunshin said to Ai Xiaoxi, but Ai Xiaoxi sighed and shook her head. This Sister Chen really can't do anything to her. But thinking about it, this trip was also thanks to her care, so Ai Xiaoxi didn't say anything. She just put their luggage on the sofa and began to pack. In fact, it's called luggage, but it's mainly the clothes they wear. The company's photography clothes, cameras, and other things were packed separately in the United States. After getting off the plane, naturally people from the company came to pick them up. Those things have already been taken away by the company's people, but when they were dividing the luggage, they unexpectedly found 2 sets of packaged clothes with Jiang Hai's name written on them. At first they were stunned. Until they found out that these were 2 sets of women's clothes, their faces couldn't help but blush. They knew that these were given to them by Jiang Hai. So under the gaze of the staff who came to pick them up, they took these 2 sets of clothes and their luggage and left. Returning to their home in the capital, both Feng Yunshin and Ai Xiaoxi felt a little emotional. Sister Chen, how much do you think Jiang Hai bought us this set of clothes? Pulling the things over, the most conspicuous one was the set of clothes placed on the top. This set of clothes was not from the same brand but a mix of them. The trench coat is from Burberry, there are also Donkey brand, Chanel, Versace, Givenchy. Anyway, Jiang Hai doesn't really choose. He just buys whichever one he thinks is beautiful. Money? He didn't really care about these things. Therefore, from a professional fashion point of view, Jiang Hai's outfit was indeed a little strange. It was a little too extravagant. After all, Jiang Hai had bought the most expensive non-custom-made products among these brands. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, these clothes were really very beautiful. It was also very good to wear them out and mix them up. Ai Xiaoxi looked at the clothes in her hand and asked Feng Yunshin curiously. She had just entered this circle. Although she longed for these clothes, she didn't know much. For a woman, a good dress was always the best. Can't you check it yourself? She rolled her eyes at AI Xiaoxi. In fact, when she came back just now, Feng Yunshan had already checked. But she didn't say it clearly because there were some things that she had to check herself to show more sincerity. Yeah. Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Xiaoxi slapped her forehead and began to search online. Needless to say, the internet was really powerful now. Under her inquiry, it didn't take long for her to find the price of these clothes. However, that was in the United States and this was in China. The luxury goods in China were more expensive than in the United States. God, this set of clothes is close to 2 million yuan? Pointing at the clothes, Xiaoxi's eyes were full of shock. Originally, she entered this industry for money. Now, just by a trip to the United States, not only did she shoot a fashion film, but she also got clothes worth 2 million yuan? She suddenly found it hard to accept. No, this gift is too expensive. I can't accept it. I'd better send it back to Jianghai. She hesitated for a moment. Although she really wanted to sell this set of clothes and send the money home, she knew that she couldn't do so. So after thinking for a while, she decided to send the clothes back to Jianghai. These things are too precious. Well, 2 million yuan is nothing to Jianghai. It's not like you don't know his ability. Just accept it. Alright, don't think about selling these clothes. Take the money back to your parents. This is from Jianghai. It should be enough for you to live a good life. Seeing that she really wanted to get up and send it back, Feng Yunshan couldn't help but sigh. This Xiaoxi is really a good girl, but since she's a good girl, then there should be someone who likes her to love her. She didn't know whether the matter between her and Jianghai was a good thing or a bad thing. After pulling her to sit down, she also took out a Visa bank card from her bag and stuffed it into her hand. Sister Chin, I can't accept this money. Jianghai and I are willing. I don't want our relationship to become related to money. I won't say anything about us. Looking at Feng Yunshan in front of her and the card she handed over, Xiaoxi frowned. What does Jianghai mean by this? Is he trying to shut me up? I heard that he also has a wife in the country. Is he afraid that I'll talk nonsense and cause trouble for him? Thinking of this, Xiaoxi's heart couldn't help but feel empty. What are you thinking? Jianghai is not the kind of person you think he is. I also have a card. This is not a breakup fee, nor is it hush money. You can tell whoever you want about your relationship with Jianghai. With this relationship, even if you don't become famous in the country, no one will dare to touch you. This is just a simple pocket money for you. I also heard about your family's matters. I can't help you, but this money you can use it however you want. Feng Yunshan patted Xiaoxi's head with the card. This little girl's mind is really messy. What is she thinking about? This guy, I was going to forget him when I returned to the country. Now it seems that I can't forget him. Hearing Feng Yunshan say this, Xiaoxi also slowly took the bank card. Looking at the bank card that Jianghai specially chose with the ending number 520, Xiaoxi really didn't know what to say. Is Jianghai confessing to me? Am I really going to be Jianghai's lover for the rest of my life? But in retrospect, it doesn't seem like a bad idea to be his lover. Xiaoxi shook her head and threw this thought out. She took a deep breath and then slowly exhaled. In any case, Jianghai really helped her a lot this time. She really needed money now. I'll just take it as a loan. She hesitated for a moment before stuffing the card into her wallet. There are $1 million in the card, about 6 million yuan. When you want to use it, you need to go to the bank in the country to activate it first and exchange it for yuan before you can use it. Do you understand? Seeing Xiaoxi take the bank card, Feng Yunshan continued to speak lazily. In fact, she was also a little tangled in the depths of her heart, but she knew that she was a person with a dark history. There was no way for her to stand by Jianghai's side openly, but this Xiaoxi, she had a good chance. But no matter how she acted, it wouldn't be very good. Jianghai gave them money and gave it to Xiaoxi because Jianghai heard about her experience. Secondly, it was because they had a relationship with him, so he wouldn't let them lack money to spend. And giving it to Feng Yunshan might have another meaning. This was also a problem for her to choose a side again. More than 6 million. Okay. She just received 2 million yuan worth of clothes, and now she received 6 million yuan in cash. Suddenly, Xiaoxi felt that she seemed to have become the kind of person she despised the most. But she had to admit that money came really fast. After carefully putting the card into her compartment, Xiaoxi packed up her things again. But when she opened her backpack and looked at the brand new SLR camera inside, she felt as if her heart was punched. When she talked to Jianghai in the forest, she expressed her love for photography. She really didn't expect that Jianghai would still remember it. Jianghai gave her money and clothes. To be honest, it wasn't as shocking as this opportunity. This guy. Looking at the camera in her backpack, Xiaoxi's eyes seemed to be hazy. Xiaoxi, let's move and live together. I want to sell this house. Just as AI Xiaoxi was about to cry from being moved by Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshan's voice gradually came over. That clear voice seemed to be telling her that she had also made a choice. At this time, Jiang Hai didn't know what happened in the capital, and he naturally didn't know what happened in Boston. As a flight landed at the airport in Boston, a big man with a height of more than 2 meters squeezed out of the closed cabin and walked out of the airport. Behind him there was a sloppy white man. Is this Boston? Standing on the land outside the airport, the big man said in a buzzing voice. Yeah, this is Boston. Let's go, big man. I'll take you to see our boss. Hearing the words of the big man, the white man turned his head with a smile and said to the big man behind him. Your boss? I'm not interested in him. I'm here to find this person. After listening to the words of the white man in front of him, the big man didn't answer. Instead, he shook his head with a serious face and pointed to the business card in his hand. Only to see a person's name written on this business card, Moses Adams. In addition to this person's name, there was only a phone number, but it seemed that the big man wasn't going to make this call, or he had already made a call, but there was no news. Don't worry, my boss is a very powerful person in our area. There is no one in Boston that he can't find. Let's go. Looking at the big man behind him who seemed to have a low IQ, the white man in front smiled and led him outside. Chapter 373. It's really unlucky, but fortunately I'll be signing the contract tomorrow. Jiang Hai naturally didn't know about this at this time. After he left his home in Prawalton, he drove back to his manor. After what happened last night, Jiang Hai was indeed a little embarrassed about Aphrodite, but that feeling had gradually disappeared. In addition, he had to sign the contract tomorrow, so he had to rush back tonight. He left Atlantic City. Jiang Hai didn't have time to have fun in this gambling city on the East Coast, so he drove back to his manor. From Atlantic City to New York it took more than an hour. From New York to Boston it took more than 3 hours. From Boston to his manor, it took more than half an hour. In between, Jiang Hai stopped the car a few times, rested a few times, ate some food and went to the bathroom. So when he came back, the sky was already faintly dark. As the car drove into his manor, Jiang Hai looked at the familiar image. Although he had only left for a few days, he was still very pleased. At least in his opinion, returning to his own home was the most comfortable thing. Compared to those who liked to run outside all day long, Jiang Hai still preferred his own home. After parking the car, Jiang Hai returned to the villa. At this time, Daliana and Marian were sitting there watching TV. Seeing Jiang Hai come back, they were surprised because they didn't expect Jiang Hai to come back today. However, they were still very happy about this surprise. For them, the difference between having Jiang Hai and not having Jiang Hai in the family was getting bigger and bigger. It was no longer like the time when Jiang Hai wasn't there. It didn't make much difference whether he was there or not. After having a delicious dinner at home, Jiang Hai, Daliana, and Marian watched TV together for a while, and then the two girls went upstairs to sleep. Jiang Hai also returned to his room to rest. The next morning, Jiang Hai went out for a run and came back for breakfast. When he came back, everyone was already busy. The fishermen began to prepare the feed, the cowboys began to herd the cattle, and Aphrodite went to the vineyard to get ready to work. Because Jiang Hai's vineyard didn't use pesticides and fertilizers, everything was grown naturally. Of course, the biggest effect was the nourishment of Jiang Hai's spiritual energy, but in any case the vineyard still grew very well. But because there were no pesticides, the insects in nature also knew that this place was very good. The insects in the vegetable fields were sometimes eaten by wyverns and chicks, but the insects in the grape trellis couldn't be eaten by the chicks. If they flew up to eat them, they would easily spoil the grapes. Therefore, every morning they had to manually remove the insects. They had to use their hands to kill the insects or destroy their eggs. This required a lot of labor. Of course, Jiang Hai never came here to do this work because he was quite afraid of insects, very afraid. Jiang Hai wasn't afraid of other things such as snakes, lizards, and beasts, but his resistance to insects was very weak. Thinking back to when he went into the sea, the only time he was scared was because of the giant deep sea louse. The people in Jiang Hai's manor were surprised to see Jiang Hai come back. This was because they didn't hear that Jiang Hai would come back at this time. Now that they saw Jiang Hai come back, they were very happy. Especially Aphrodite, the way she looked at Jiang Hai changed. But it was also because of this that Jiang Hai felt a little burdened. After saying hello to everyone, Jiang Hai returned home. After eating breakfast, he went to his warehouse to check it out. As the warehouse door opened, the situation inside was reflected in his eyes. In the corner of the warehouse, a woman was sitting in an iron cage, bored and looking at the ceiling light. This woman was none other than Azalina Vikabo, the woman who attacked Jiang Hai. She had been here for almost a week. Jiang Hai could basically conclude that this woman's original target wasn't him. It was just an accident. But whether it was an accident or not, this woman knew some things about Jiang Hai. So Jiang Hai was in a dilemma. What should he do? Logically speaking, the best choice was to directly kill her and throw her into the sea for big idiot. But after all, Jiang Hai was still an ordinary person. He wasn't a ruthless person. Jiang Hai couldn't kill her just like that. But Jiang Hai couldn't just let her go like that. It was because of this that he left her here. Jiang Hai didn't mistreat this woman. Other than locking her up, there was food and drink. The lights in the warehouse were turned on 24 hours a day, so it wasn't dark. It was just that staying here alone was really boring. In the army and prison, being locked up in a small dark room was a very heavy punishment. Jiang Hai's place should be considered a big dark room. But this woman was obviously trained. In this small room, she didn't do anything extreme. Instead, she was very calm. "You're back." Seeing Jiang Hai enter the warehouse, the woman raised her head and looked at Jiang Hai indifferently. "You're very calm. Are you used to living here?" Looking at the woman's appearance, Jiang Hai chuckled. He put the things he brought in next to the iron cage, then picked up a chair and sat outside the iron cage. He said with a playful face, "I originally came to the United States to escape from my original organization. Here, in addition to no freedom, you have food and drink. And most importantly, it's very safe. So I have nothing to complain about. But if you can send me a few books, I will be very grateful." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the woman said indifferently, "She originally came here to escape. Jiang Hai can give her a safe place to live. She doesn't have to worry about food and drink. Naturally, she doesn't care. As for the problem of loneliness, a professionally trained person like her doesn't care. Well, I will bring you some books when I come back next time. What do you want to read?" Hearing the woman's words, Jiang Hai shook his head. This woman is really straightforward, but Jiang Hai doesn't care. Before Jiang Hai decides how to deal with her, let her stay here. "Thank you in advance. I want Twilight. If possible, please give me a few more Secret Garden books and pencils." Looking at Jiang Hai, the woman said with a serious face. But after hearing what she wants, Jiang Hai couldn't help but laugh. Originally, he thought that this woman was a cold-blooded killer. A cold-blooded killer shouldn't want to read these things. He didn't expect this woman to have a young girl's heart. "Don't look at me like that. After all, I am only 21 years old this year." Looking at Jiang Hai's expression, Azalina Vicarborio shrugged and said with a calm face. To be honest, seeing her suddenly reminded him that she was just in her early 20s. Because Azalina has been trained before and received missions, her skin, face, and so on are more mature than people of the same age. When Jiang Hai saw her for the first time, he thought that she was about the same age as him. But he didn't expect her to be so much younger than him. Hearing her request, Jiang Hai just nodded and left. Back home, Jiang Hai packed up and drove his car to the town. At 10 o'clock in the morning, they still have to sign the contract at the town hall. This is a big deal for Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai invested in 3 projects this time: a seaside villa, a gun shop, and a souvenir street. The estimated cost is about $250 million, but once it is built, the profits will be considerable. Jiang Hai naturally won't make a loss. If the tourist flow of Winthrop is maintained at 100,000 a year, Jiang Hai estimates that he can make more than $30 million. After deducting taxes, he can make back his capital in about 20 years. Then it will be pure profit. But if it is $1 million a year, then he can make back his capital in 2 years. Of course, $1 million is just an idea. Winthrop is located on the East Coast, which isn't a very good location. That's because the local tycoons prefer to play on the West Coast, which is closer to California. The East Coast is too far away for them. According to Moses Adams and the townspeople, the tourists here are mainly Americans and Europeans. But Jiang Hai doesn't think so. There's always a voice in his heart that tells him that his country will definitely help him a lot in this regard. So, Jiang Hai doesn't hesitate to fork out $250 million. After arriving at the town hall, Jiang Hai signs the contract with the mayor and the town's representative. Under the gaze of Moses Adams and the town's representative lawyer, Jiang Hai signs his name on several contracts. Then Jiang Hai directly transfers $100 million to the town's finances. Jiang Hai's obligation in the contract is only to fork out the money and take care of the profits. As for the rest, from construction to operation, Jiang Hai himself doesn't care, but he has the responsibility to supervise. Americans are different from Chinese. Chinese like to talk about these things at the big dinner table, but Americans don't like to. After Jiang Hai transferred the money, the townspeople have already started to move. In their eyes, things like celebration banquets are meaningless. Right now, the most important thing is to make money as soon as possible. Looking at the busy people, Jiang Hai has been here for many months after all. He is very clear about the efficiency of the people here, so he just shrugs and leaves with Moses Adams. After the two of them went to have lunch, Jiang Hai transferred $10 million to him. This is his commission. Moses Adams is extremely excited about this money. At the same time, he is even more certain that as long as he works for Jiang Hai will definitely treat him well. Moses Adams didn't say too many nice words, nor did he show any loyalty. He knows that Jiang Hai isn't someone who listens to these words. After lunch, he hurried back to Boston. But this time he will be back soon because his focus has completely shifted to Jiang Hai. Compared to a person who can give him tens of millions of dollars in commission at any time, it's better not to take those small cases in Boston. But if he serves Jiang Hai well, he believes that he will definitely earn more than before. Chapter 374. Hey boss, you're here. Let's go, we're going to catch a mountain lion today. Bell Lester looked at Jiang Hai, who was sitting on the lawn in front of the mansion. He was half lying on a recliner and reading a book. Bell Lester walked over and said with a smile, "Today? Okay, wait for me, I'll get the gun." Hearing Bell's words, Jiang Hai also smiled. After putting the page he was reading in a corner, he stood up, stretched, and whistled at the little guys who were still playing in the distance. Goldie and Xiao Bai are the main force to catch a mountain lion. When the two dogs heard the whistle and rushed over, Jiang Hai had already entered the house and took out his gun from the room on the second floor. Compared to other people, Jiang Hai doesn't like Remington's shotgun very much. He still prefers his August and Desert Eagle. Maybe this is also deeply influenced by his past playing Counter-Strike. Although the 22 and 21 are very strong, not many people use this gun. After filling the two guns with bullets, Jiang Hai also went downstairs. When he came down, Goldie and Xiao Bai have been waiting for a long time. As for Chirp and Dai Fong, a bird of prey and a squirrel is not a good combination, so they stayed at home. Seeing Jiang Hai coming over, Goldie and Xiao Bai also followed behind Jiang Hai. "Boss, you read this kind of book?" Seeing Jiang Hai coming over with the two dogs, Bell couldn't help but raise the book he was reading just now and asked with some surprise. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but smile awkwardly. "Oh, I have nothing to do, so I flipped through it." Indeed, the previous Jiang Hai really didn't have a good impression of these books. This was all an accident. The book that Jiang Hai was reading was none other than the second book of Twilight that Azalina Vicabrio had bought for him. On that day, after Jiang Hai went to sign the contract, there was a bookstore opposite the place where he and Moses Adams had dinner. When Moses Adams went back to Boston to pack up his things, Jiang Hai had already gone to the bookstore and bought what he wanted. However, when he left the town, he accidentally encountered a car accident. Of course, it was not his car that was hit, but because the people in the town contacted many engineering teams to build these things, and these engineering teams had accidents. The driveway in the United States is not very wide. A big car stopped there blocking the driveway and it takes time to disperse it. The protagonist, because he was bored, picked up a book and started reading it. She did not expect that she would really fall in love with it. Twilight was a horror romance novel written by the American writer Stephen Meyer. Of course, the horror was secondary. Jiang Hai really didn't see the horror in this thing. Romance is actually the main theme of this book. So far, there are a total of 5 novels: Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, Daybreak, and Midnight Sunshine. Among them, Midnight Sunshine told the story of Twilight from the perspective of the male lead. It was up to him whether he wanted to read it or not. The main storyline of these 4 books is about a love story between a human and a vampire. At the beginning of Twilight, the protagonist's name was Bella Swan. She was a 17-year-old high school student. Her father was a policeman and her mother divorced. She followed her father to a small town called Forks. When she was in school, she met the vampire Edward Cullen. The origin of vampires and werewolves is said in the book to be because of a certain plague in ancient Europe. In the last village, only a man named Corvinus survived. Later, this guy had 3 children. One of them was bitten by a bat that was infected with the plague, another was bitten by a wolf that was infected with the plague, and the last one was a human. These were the ancestors of humans, vampires and werewolves. The setting of the story was very nonsensical but also very simple. It is very in line with the aesthetic view of the Americans. The plot and back of the story are not very big but very delicate. The main storyline of Twilight is that Bella was chased by a vampire named James. In the end, Edward killed James and the story was over. The main storyline of the second book, New Moon, is that Bella fell in love with Edward and wanted to integrate into his world. As a result, at a birthday party, Bella bled out and almost caused a riot. In order not to hurt the girl, Edward took his family and left. The second male lead, Jacob, the werewolf, appeared and played the role of the spare tire perfectly. In the end, Edward's sister came and the female lead ran away. The third book, Eclipse, is about the male and female lead finally being together. At this time they are about to graduate from high school. The sister of James, who died in the first book, came back to take revenge. In the end, Jacob and Edward led their family to defeat this woman. Now Jiang Hai is reading the fourth book, which is also the end of the story. Bella and Edward are married and pregnant. Bella wants to become a vampire, but Edward doesn't agree. There is also a rival family who wants to take advantage of the ban on humans and vampires to kill the Cullen family. In the end they don't succeed. At least it is a happy ending. The story is very simple and not too complicated. It is not too hard to think about. Jiang Hai is quite happy reading it these days. This also made Azalina a little speechless. Wasn't she the one who wanted to read it first? In any case, Jiang Hai is now almost done with the fourth book. Suddenly he found that the books on the foreign sales list are quite interesting. After reading these things, he is ready to read Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia. These two books, together with Harry Potter, are known as the three mountains of fantasy novels in the Western world. Jiang Hai is really curious. He had never read any of these three books in China before. He had only watched the first part of the Chronicles of Narnia and the first part of the Harry Potter series. He had never read any of the other books. Now that he was bored, he could make up for it. After packing up, Jiang Hai and Belle drove the four-wheeled motorcycle to the periphery of the forest in his manor. At this time, it is already the end of May. It is almost June and the weather has officially entered summer. Everywhere is lush. The sun is bright, the grass is long and eagles are flying. Looking at the pasture by the roadside and the small flowers blooming in the middle, Jiang Hai also felt a breath of nature. The grass in Jiang Hai's manor is different from the wild grass outside. These grasses are all pasture and pasture is also different. Pasture is just a general term. There are many kinds of pasture. Different things are fed, so naturally the species is different. For example, if you raise geese and chickens, you have to feed chicory and alfalfa. Alfalfa is the clover. If Jiang Hai did not raise them, he would not know. There are also pennisetum, Mexican corn, rumex, and so on. If you raise rabbits, in addition to the grass above, rye and timothy are also good. If you raise fish, you have to use Mexican corn, Gordon grass, Sudan grass, pennisetum, alfalfa, and rye. But then again, Americans basically do not raise fish. They do not raise sea fish and they do not eat river fish. There is no need to raise them. For pigs, cattle, and sheep, the first choice is pennisetum. Alfalfa is alfalfa, which grows taller. There are also chicory, rumex, rye, Mexican corn, Gordon grass, and Gordon grass. Only these are suitable. In Jiang Hai's manor, there are no special pasture plants. Most of them were left by the previous owner, so the area is also a little mixed. Most of the pasture is alfalfa. There are also some pennisetum and Gordon grass, but alfalfa is the most abundant. In addition, there are some chicory. The others are not in large patches. Under the nourishment of spiritual energy, they grow quite well. The four-leaf clover, which represents luck in other places, is abundant in Jiang Hai's manor. There seem to be fewer three-leaf clovers than four-leaf clovers. In addition to four-leaf clovers, there are five-leaf clovers, six-leaf clovers, seven-leaf clovers, and eight-leaf clovers. In the middle of these pasture plants, there are some saffron seeds that Jiang Hai specially bought. Saffron's scientific name is saffron. It is the most precious spice in the world. However, although this medicinal material is known as Tibetan, in fact, the Tibetan area on the west side of Wuxia does not produce this thing. The largest production base of this thing is actually near Shanghai. It is also not a native medicine of Wuxia. It was first artificially cultivated in Greece. It is mainly distributed in Europe and the Mediterranean area. It was only introduced to China in the Ming Dynasty. Now there are many more planted areas in Europe than in China. More than 90% of the saffron in China is actually produced in Shanghai. When Jiang Hai first learned about this, he was a little confused, but this is indeed the truth. Jiang Hai planted this thing here not to sell it for money but to feed it to the cows. It seems that the effect is not bad. Along the way the two quickly reached the periphery of the forest. There are many benefits to being by the sea. It is not cold in winter and it is not hot in summer. There is sunshine, beaches, seafood, everything, but the only problem is that summer is too difficult. It is not because of the heat but because the wind is too strong in summer. The Boston area is located on the Atlantic Ocean. In winter there will be snowstorms. In summer there will be torrential rain. There will also be typhoons and tornadoes. Even when there is no torrential rain or typhoon, the wind is much stronger than inland areas. Wind speed of force 5 or 6 is actually not very rare. Facing the wind and the sun, Jiang Hai and Belle also stopped the car. After they got out of the car, the people who have already arrived gathered. This time, Jiang Hai put in a lot of effort to drive away the mountain lions. A total of 6 people came. In addition to Jiang Hai and Belle Lester, there are 2 other people on the Cowboys' side. They are Burke Dollar and Harriman Fells. Robbins Garcia and Philemon Turner have to look after the cow sheet. On the other side, 2 fishermen came, Andrew Christian and Eleanor Cece. Edward and Tommy Charles have to prepare the fish food, and Marin Rupert has to fly the plane to patrol. After everyone arrived, everyone checked their weapons. With Jiang Hai's order, everyone walked towards the forest. Chapter 375. Boss, pay attention to your feet when you walk. It's summer now. You can't tell what's in the grass. Pull it out with your spear when you walk. Looking at Jiang Hai beside him, Belle Lester whispered to him. Hearing what he said, Jiang Hai also nodded, indicating that he understood. He used his August to pull out the grass around him. While walking he observed the situation of this small forest. Boss, I'll lead the way. Seeing Jiang Hai's cautiousness, Harriman Fells behind him couldn't help laughing. Harriman Fells actually didn't talk much with Jiang Hai. Because this person had some problems with his intelligence, when he spoke, he would often speak half a beat slower. That is to say, when he is talking to you, he suddenly disconnects and becomes silent. Then it may take an hour or 2 before he remembers, but by this time the person talking to him has already left. It was precisely because of this relationship that he didn't have a good life in the town. However, he really loved and respected Jiang Hai because Jiang Hai gave him food and shelter and also gave him a bonus. At the same time, Jiang Hai was also very willing to accept him like his colleagues. This made Harriman have a very good impression of Jiang Hai. Although he usually didn't show it, to be honest, he was the most active and serious person here. This didn't mean that others weren't serious, but after they finished what they should do, even if they took the initiative to do something, it wouldn't be too much. But he really cared about the grass and trees here. The most famous thing was that whenever Jiang Hai's cows were about to give birth, Harriman would go and watch them at night. Although Jiang Hai didn't say these things clearly, he knew it. Every month, Harriman received the most bonuses from Jiang Hai's cowboys, but no one was jealous of him. Instead, they were very happy for him. They were happy that he found a good job and they were happy that he had a good boss. Usually he did the most tiring and troublesome work, cleaning up the cow dung, but he didn't complain. Now that he heard that there was danger in the grass ahead, he took the initiative to come forward and help. However, Jiang Hai waved his hand to stop him. Because of Harriman's identity, he was the only one who didn't have a gun among the 6. Because the gun seller didn't know if he would be a threat to the people around him after he took a gun. So today he only took a huge machete, which was originally custom-made by Jiang Hai. In the United States, guns were allowed, but the management of cold weapons was extremely strict. Not to mention crossbows, even swords, knives and daggers. If you dared to take them out on the street, the police would investigate you. After Jiang Hai came, he bought some outdoor cold weapons, but they were all placed at home as decorations. For example, some bows and arrows or some equipment from the game. Especially when Jiang Hai had the financial resources and found that he only needed to order these things online, he was even happier. Although he couldn't take them out, it was good to put them at home. Occasionally he could take them out to show off. So there were a lot of these things hanging on the wall of his corridor, most of which were from the game. For example, the most famous one, Frostmourne, of course, had no magic. It was just an ordinary big sword. There were also Azanatha's double blades, Thunder's Fury, Quell, Sarah, and so on. The original version of the sword in Harriman's hand was the Fallen Ashbringer. Naturally, it didn't have the flash effect of the original version, but it was really good looking. This big sword was originally Jiang Hai's, but once he organized a party at home. After Harriman took a fancy to it, Jiang Hai gave this big sword to him. After he polished it with a machine, it really looked good when he carried it on his back. At least in Jiang Hai's view, it was quite scary. At least it scared him. It's okay, you don't have to worry about me. If I can't solve the problem, you can't solve it either. Patting Harriman on the shoulder, Jiang Hai said with a smile. Harriman looked at Jiang Hai in front of him, who was half a head shorter than him, and couldn't help but nod a little woodenly. He had fought with Jiang Hai before. Of course it was just for fun, but he knew very well that Jiang Hai was much stronger than him. Seeing that Harriman didn't speak, Jiang Hai continued to walk forward, and the others who followed him also looked around vigilantly. Jiang Hai's group of 6 had all kinds of things. For example, Jiang Hai had a spear, a big desert eagle, and Bell had a spear, a handgun, and a pistol. As for the 3 old men, they had all kinds of equipment. Burke Dollar had a double-barreled shotgun, a cowboy hat that he wouldn't take off no matter how hot it was, and a smoking pipe in his mouth. He looked like an old ruffian. This guy had always been quiet, but Jiang Hai heard that he was very happy recently. Because Jiang Hai had split the money last time, he paid all the alimony he owed his daughter in one go, which surprised his ex-wife and daughter. Later, his daughter learned from Moses Adams that her father could really make a lot of money with Jiang Hai, and the relationship between the family gradually eased. The reason why they were so hostile to him was mainly because they expected better from him, although not all places in the world were filled with money. However, it was undeniable that there were too many people who judged a person's ability based on their net worth. This was especially true in the United States, where money was more important than relationships. As for Eleanor Cece and Andrew Christian, who were walking at the back, the weapons they used were more conventional. They used the most common Remington, which was the weapon with the highest civilian sales in the United States. This kind of weapon didn't require too much training because the bullets used were different, and the effect would be different. If it was a shotgun, it would hit a large area. Not only was it powerful, but the effect was also not bad. It could also be used for self-defense. Fishermen liked to use this kind of weapon because it was very effective against sharks in the sea. Of course, in the sea, the scariest thing was not sharks but people. This was something that everyone who had been out to sea knew. This time they were hunting mountain lions. To be honest, it was easier for these 2 to catch sharks than mountain lions. Therefore they were more or less worried. When they were worried, they would be nervous. When they were nervous, they would stop talking. Therefore, after Jiang Hai and Harriman's conversation ended, the whole team was silent again. The only thing that entered Jiang Hai's ears was the sound of the wind blowing the leaves and grass, and the chirping of birds in the distance. Even the insects might have felt the murderous aura from the 6 people and chose to shut up at this time. The 6 people gradually moved inside and saw more animals. The first to bear the brunt was the animal that lived at the bottom of the food chain, the wild rabbit. As Jiang Hai and the others moved forward, they saw many rabbits flash by. If it wasn't for the mountain lion hunt, Jiang Hai really wanted to kill a few. In Jiang Hai's manner, rabbits were not a disaster. However, there were definitely a lot of them, at least dozens of times more than cows. On the grassland there were many rabbit holes. Sometimes, when Xiaobai and Little Huang were not full or wanted to play, they would catch rabbits on the grassland. He even caught it and gave it to Jiang Hai to eat. However, wild rabbits don't taste good. Domesticated rabbits don't have any taste. Therefore, whatever it was made with, it would taste the same. Plus, it was marinated with pepper and starch, chicken soup, mountain delicacies, and so on. The taste was quite good. Bash's famous dish, Basha rammed rabbit and dried rabbit meat pot, which was quite famous. It cured a lot of people who don't eat rabbit meat, but wild rabbits don't taste very good. This was because they were born with a smell of game, which was the smell of soil. Other game, other than the smell of soil, also had its own smell. However, rabbits had no smell. This kind of rabbit had a pure soil smell and it was not delicious to cook. It would only taste good if it was marinated for a long time to get rid of the soil smell. However, the problem was that it was troublesome to cook. Therefore, although Jiang Hai's rabbits were very round, Jiang Hai had no love for this kind of rabbit. However, just because he did not like it, it did not mean that others did not like it. For example, Jiang Hai's Little Huang, Xiaobai, and the many cattle dogs he raised were all diehard fans of these rabbits, especially the target that Jiang Hai wanted to catch this time. If not for these rabbits, he would not have come. However, before Jiang Hai got rid of the soil smell of these rabbits, it was unlikely that he would come to catch them. Compared to rabbits, there was another kind of game that Jiang Hai liked to eat. That was pheasant. In fact, wyverns were also a kind of pheasant. However, Jiang Hai was talking about proper pheasants. There were many pheasants in this forest. The lean meat on their bodies was more than the fat, but the most important thing was that there was oil in the lean meat. After being cooked, the meat was very firm and not dry, and it was very fragrant. However, these pheasants needed to be more careful. Their brains did not allow them to go to places where there were no trees, so they did not move outside of the forest. This made many people lose the opportunity to eat them. However, for Jiang Hai, it did not matter because he could go in and catch them at any time. Since they walked into the forest, rabbits and pheasants were the things they saw the most. Chapter 376. To be honest, with Jiang Hai's nourishment of spiritual energy, the mountain lion was not the only animal attracted. Jiang Hai's manor was not far from the Alabama mountains. Although it was not close, some small animals with a large territory had already regarded Jiang Hai's manor as their home. Entering the forest, when Jiang Hai came here last winter, besides some birds, turkeys, rabbits, pheasants and some small squirrels, there were almost no other creatures here. But this year, when Jiang Hai came again, there were more and more creatures, especially small animals. In addition to the insects that would disappear in the winter, there were also a large number of amphibians, a variety of birds, even snakes and lizards. There were a lot of them here. Although there were no large greenhorns, according to Jiang Hai's estimation, if there were no fences, it wouldn't be long before this place became a protected wildlife area in the Alabama mountains. Jiang Hai did not dislike animals. He liked animals very much. On one hand, he liked to eat them. On the other hand, he also liked small animals. He liked small cats, small dogs and large beasts. Looking at the lively scene in front of him, Jiang Hai was very pleased. The group walked slowly into the forest. In addition to Jiang Hai, Belle, who was walking side by side with Jiang Hai, had been observing the surrounding situation. If there was any trouble, he would react immediately. Jiang Hai's forest was not big. It was only about 100 acres. According to the rules, 1 acre was equal to 15 mu, and 1 acre was equal to 666 square meters. Jiang Hai's forest was about 1 million square meters, which was about 1 square kilometer. According to the domestic calculation, it was about 2 bus stops horizontally and 2 bus stops vertically. In fact, it was not very big. However, Jiang Hai's forest was not very wide. It was only about 300 meters wide and the rest was long. The original purpose of this forest was to protect the grassland and buildings in the manor from storms and snowstorms. Therefore, half a circle was planted along the sea. After more than 10 years of development, the forest had grown. The trees had grown into towering trees. There were also many small trees that were slowly growing. They were already more than one size bigger than before. If he were to measure it now, the area occupied by these trees might be even larger. However, Jiang Hai did not care. Having more trees was a good thing for him. Of course, these trees were also Jiang Hai's private property. If one day he did not like them, he could cut them down. They were all his property. Boss, be careful. Just when Jiang Hai was sighing with emotion about the rich species here, Belle, who was walking in front of him, suddenly pulled Jiang Hai. This shocked Jiang Hai, and then he began to look around. But after looking around, he did not find any threat. He couldn't help but look at Belle strangely. Feeling Jiang Hai's gaze, Belle pointed in front of Jiang Hai. Looking at the direction of his finger, Jiang Hai found that about 1 meter in front of him, there was a spider web hanging above his head. At this time, there were many small cocoons on the spider's web. These were not eggs that were hatching, but insects that were wrapped in cocoons. They were also the spider's dinner. As for the owner of this web, it was hanging in a corner of the web, motionless. Damn, a spider. Looking at this guy, Jiang Hai couldn't help but whisper. This spider didn't look big, about 2 centimeters, less than 3 centimeters. Its body was dark, but there was a little red behind its buttocks. This is a black widow, a very common spider in the United States. It is the most poisonous of all spiders, but boss, you don't have to worry about it. The toxicity of this spider is not much of a threat to humans. Except for the elderly, children, and the sick, ordinary people will only feel a lot of pain when bitten. Basically, there is no danger to their life. Seeing Jiang Hai's shocked look, Belle also smiled and said, "They have dealt with these little guys all year round. Black Widow is not fatal?" Hearing Belle's words, Jiang Hai felt a little incredulous. He always heard that after being bitten by a black widow, something will happen. Now someone suddenly told him that this thing is not fatal. It's really hard for him to believe. We often ambush in the wild, and being bitten by this kind of thing has become a habit. To be honest, the pain of this thing is really not small, so it's better for us to avoid it. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Belle also smiled and led Jiang Hai to avoid this spider web. Black Widow is not fatal, then is there anything fatal in this forest? Although Jiang Hai took a detour, he was still very curious. He looked at Belle and asked. After Belle heard Jiang Hai's words, he also looked around. That thing is more fatal. Pointing to the distance, Belle said to Jiang Hai lightly. Jiang Hai looked around and found that the place he pointed to was a huge beehive. Jiang Hai really didn't notice it when he came here last time. When did such a big beehive form here? A beehive means that there is honey here. I guess the wild honey inside will taste good. Looking at the beehive in front of him, Jiang Hai whispered, but after listening to his words, not only Belle looked at him in amusement, even Burke Dollar behind him, Eleanor Cece, and Andrew Christian looked at him with a smile. Only Harriman Fells was still firm. Boss, that thing can't be provoked, that is a killer bee. In the end it was Belle who told Jiang Hai. The so-called killer bees are also called African bees. They are divided into two kinds, honeybees and wasps. Honeybees are actually similar to ordinary bees, but they have a violent temper and extremely strong combat power, while wasps eat other pests and bees. They can be regarded as the guardians of the forest. Among these bees, the most threatening one is the hybrid version of European and African bees. This kind of bee is the largest, with the strongest attack power, stronger vitality, and amazing combat power. According to records in the past few decades, hundreds of people have been stung to death by this kind of bee, and countless cats and dogs have died unnatural deaths. Other than adult bears that can compete with them, other creatures have to run away when they see them. The grass on Jiang Hai's grassland is very good, and the flowers that grow naturally are also very good. They produce a lot of honey and are rich in nutrients. Because of the nutrition, Jiang Hai's beehive, which was originally not very special, has become a lot bigger this year. Compared to the black widow, the killer bee is much more powerful. Of course, this is something that Jiang Hai just found out. In North America, there are 12 King Kong, representing 12 kinds of animals. Although it is not like Australia where poisonous animals are everywhere, there are naturally many poisonous animals here. The killer bee is ranked first, the rattlesnake is ranked second, the Gila lizard is ranked third, the black widow is ranked fourth, the alligator is ranked fifth, and there are cottonmouth snakes, tiger sharks, cougars, spotted rattlesnakes, brown bears and so on. These things are not particularly threatening to humans, but the premise is that humans do not provoke them. Looking at Jiang Hai's curious look, Belle also smiled and explained to him. But halfway through, Harriman Ferns, who was behind them, suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the two men. Just when the two men were surprised, they found that everyone behind them squatted down. At the same time, Burke Dahlia pointed to the distance. Following the direction he pointed, Jiang Hai and Belle also squatted down and looked in that direction. Their eyes couldn't help but light up, because at this time in the forest clearing in the distance, their target had appeared. But what's not right is that Jiang Hai's target was only one mountain lion, but now it has become 6. The biggest one, which was also the one that Jiang Hai once fought, was lying under the sun and taking a nap. Beside it, there were 5 little guys that looked very small. They were playing around it, and in the center of their play there was a creature. Jiang Hai also knew this creature. It was the armadillo known as the American pangolin. At this time it was curled up into a ball. The shell of this creature could bounce off bullets, not to mention the claws and teeth of a lion. The female mountain lion probably knew that she couldn't do anything to this guy, so she let her children play with this guy as a toy. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Then they all looked at Jiang Hai because they didn't know what to do next. Should they continue or go to the Animal Conservation Center and take these little guys away? To be honest, Jiang Hai was also a little hesitant because these little guys are quite cute. But after all, these guys were ferocious beasts. If they grew up and attacked his family, it would be troublesome. However, chasing them away like this was quite troublesome. He never expected that the female mountain lion, who was still alone the last time he saw her, would give birth so quickly. Furthermore, she gave birth to 5 cubs. Mountain lions could only give birth to 6 cubs at most. This fellow was really impressive. She gave birth to 5 cubs by herself. Most importantly, these 5 cubs looked pretty good. Just as Jiang Hai was a little hesitant about this, thinking about whether to chase them away himself or inform the protection center, the female mountain lion suddenly stood up. Suddenly, the lioness stood up and stared at the surroundings. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai and the others were startled. They thought that they had been exposed. Just as Jiang Hai was about to attack, a loud cry came from the bushes on their side. Then a huge wild boar came running from the bushes in the distance. When he saw this guy, Jiang Hai was also shocked because there were no wild boars in this forest. What's going on with this wild boar? In fact, what Jiang Hai didn't know was that most animals can swim, including wild boars. Since the mountain lion could swim to Jiang Hai, it was naturally possible for wild boars to do the same. If Jiang Hai looked carefully, There were actually many surprises waiting for him in this small forest. Chapter 377. Humans were very contradictory creatures. For example, humans always claimed that all creatures were equal and that nature was sovereign. But they also said that the train ran fast because of the front of the train. A snake could not function without a head. Of course, everyone had their own reasons. There was nothing much to say. Humans liked to rank humans. Who was the boss, the second, the third, the fourth, and so on? There was not only a ranking based on age but also a ranking based on ability. For example, the famous Liangshan Lake. Back then he and Zhuangtai. He seemed to have made a mistake. Anyway, humans liked to rank things. There was no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. Everything had its own strengths and weaknesses. Animals were humans' neighbors on this planet, so they naturally liked to arrange seats for these animals. Wuxia's old driver once said that there were 1 pig, 2 bears, and 3 tigers in the forest. Of course, this did not mean that wild boars were more powerful than bears and tigers. It was just that such creatures were the biggest threat to other creatures in the forest or in the natural world. Because pigs were really stupid. Someone once said, "No, pigs are actually very smart." That was referring to domesticated pigs as well as pet hunters. Real wild boars were really stupid. Other animals were very vigilant and knew to run when they encountered danger. However, the wild boar would not do that. Once it encountered danger, the wild boar's first reaction would be to see if it could beat it. Especially an adult wild boar with a large body. That was truly not an ordinary cannon. In the natural world, wild boars had almost no natural enemies. The creatures that mainly ate wild boars were large carnivorous creatures such as tigers and lions. But in North America these things did not exist. The largest carnivorous creature in North America was the jaguar, also known as the jaguar. It was basically about the size of a leopard. How could a leopard be useful against a wild boar? Naturally, mountain lions were useless. And the North American gray wolf, which was a huge threat to wild boars, had long been extinct. As for bears, to be honest, it was unknown whether they could beat a wild boar. Most importantly, they couldn't outrun a wild boar. Therefore, wild boars were really a local tyrant in North America. In addition, hunting wild animals in the United States, including wild boars, required a hunting license, except for people like Jiang Hai who had his own manor. Hunting animals for no reason would lead to imprisonment, which made wild boars quite bold. Not only did they dominate the forest, they even dared to attack human cars and homes. When the wild boar was full of confidence, it would often take the initiative to attack other animals or humans. It was really bold. Just like now, the wild boar had wandered into Jiang Hai's manor for some unknown reason. Now that it saw the mountain lion, it instantly launched an attack. However, the mountain lion was not to be trifled with. It had obviously fought with this guy before. Seeing the wild boar rushing over, the mountain lion quickly reacted. It jumped up immediately, turned its body inconceivably in the air, and dodged the wild boar's first attack. The wild boar mainly used 2 methods to fight. One was to hit and the other was to bite. If it hit, it would use its powerful impact like a tank to hit straight at the opponent. Then it would use the big teeth on its head to tear the opponent's skin. As long as it hit, it would probably be over if it wasn't treated in time. The second move was to bite. After landing on the ground, the mountain lion gave a low roar to the 5 little guys behind it. The 5 little guys were very intelligent and quickly ran to hide in the grass in the distance. They didn't want to delay the battle between their mother and the big stupid pig. But coincidentally, this time the place where they hid turned out to be Jiang Hai's side. As the grass was pushed aside, the 5 little guys and Jiang Hai's group looked at each other. They could clearly see a flash of surprise in Jiang Hai's eyes, and the 5 little guys' eyes also flashed a trace of surprise. Scratch, scratch, scratch. After the surprise, the 5 little guys immediately cried out. Although they had never seen humans before, the feeling engraved in their genes let them know that the humans in front of them were not harmless. Hearing the cries of her children, the mother mountain lion, who was confronting the wild boar, could not help but be stunned. She immediately turned to look at the grass and saw Jiang Hai's group at a glance. A trace of surprise and a trace of fear flashed in her eyes. Because at this moment she also saw Xiao Bai and Xiao Huang, who caused her injuries. These 2 guys were out-and-out bad guys. Thinking that her children had fallen into the hands of these people and the 2 monsters, the mother mountain lion was also stunned. She turned around and wanted to save her children, but unfortunately she forgot that there was still an enemy opposite her. Although the wild boar's brain was not very good, it still knew how to seize the opportunity. Seeing that the mountain lion was distracted, It stomped on the ground with its short limbs and rushed over in an instant. Its huge fangs pierced towards the mother mountain lion's stomach. Hearing the sound of hooves stomping on the ground, the mother mountain lion also reacted. By the time she wanted to dodge, it was already too late. Although she jumped up, the wild boar raised its head and its huge fangs instantly pierced into her stomach. Then, with a swing of its head, it threw her far away. With her stomach pierced, the mother mountain lion instantly lost her combat strength and could not help but lie there panting heavily. The wild boar that replaced the mother mountain lion's position also saw Jiang Hai and the others immediately. It had just finished off a lion. Although it was only a mountain lion, this wild boar's confidence reached its limit. It did not care if Jiang Hai and the others had guns or not. It immediately rushed towards Jiang Hai and the others. The wild boar was very fast. Although Jiang Hai and the others had already drawn their guns when they saw it, the effect was not very good. Many of the bullets fired by the panicked Jiang Hai and the others missed that guy. Out of the 5 bullets that Jiang Hai had fired, 3 of them had missed, and 2 of them had hit this guy's body. However, there was a thick layer of mud on the wild boar's body. When the sun shone on it, it was like armor. After most of the impact of the bullets was offset by this layer of mud armor, they could only penetrate the wild boar's skin but could not cause much damage to it. At the same time, in order not to hurt the 5 little guys in front of them, the shotguns behind them were useless. The only one who hit the wild boar's head was Bell, but at such a close distance, his long gun was not good. He used a pistol and the pistol's bullets were not very powerful. Just like that, it was stuck on the wild boar's head. This kind of pain made the wild boar even crazier. It did not give Jiang Hai and the others any chance at all and directly rushed towards them. Seeing this, Halamon, who had been behind Jiang Hai, turned sideways and flashed from Jiang Hai's side. The steel broadsword in his hand had already been swung and smashed heavily towards the wild boar in front of him. With a loud bang, the broadsword and the wild boar's teeth collided. Halamon's strength was not small, but he was still hit by the wild boar and could not help but take 3 steps back. As for the wild boar, it was also a little stunned. Its original momentum could not help but slow down. It stood still and shook its head. This blow also stunned it. At least it had never encountered such a blow before. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai knew that this was an opportunity. Because the distance between the two was too close, Jiang Hai didn't pull his Desert Eagle. Instead, he took a big stride and jumped into the air. At the same time, he loudly called Harriman's name. When Harriman heard Jiang Hai's words, he knew what Jiang Hai wanted to do. So he instantly threw the broadsword to Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai caught the double-handed broadsword in the air and instantly pressed it down. Cold weapons such as sabers and swords were made of steel. The harder the cold weapon was, the more brittle it was. The more flexible the cold weapon was, the less sharp it was. Jiang Hai did not think about what to do with these cold weapons before. Now it was the era of hot weapons. Although these cold weapons were not eliminated, they were almost obsolete. Therefore, his steel materials were all ordinary recovered steel. Their hardness was only 57, but that was enough. The skin of the wild boar, which was difficult to be cut by bullets, was directly cut by the blade when Jiang Hai pressed it down. Along the wild boar's neck, Jiang Hai pressed all the way down and directly cut half of the wild boar's spine. With half of the spine broken, the wild boar's nerves that controlled its body were naturally broken. It fell to the ground and began to twitch. Blood was constantly spurting out. Fortunately, Jiang Hai had already hidden to the side, otherwise his face would have been sprayed. Looking at the wild boar that had lost its ability to fight and was waiting for death, Jiang Hai heaved a sigh of relief. Then he turned around and looked at the mountain lion family behind him. At this moment, the 5 little fellows had already run to the female mountain lion's side and could not help but cry out for mercy. However, the female mountain lion had already lost its ability to fight. If the wild boar was doomed, then if the mountain lion did not save it now, it would also be doomed. Although Jiang Hai had always wanted to chase it out of the manor, Jiang Hai had never intended to kill it. But Jiang Hai really didn't want to hurt its life. Of course, if this guy attacked humans or Jiang Hai's cattle and sheep, Jiang Hai wouldn't let it go. Now, looking at it and its 5 little lions, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little moved. Looking at the wild boar that was certain to die, Jiang Hai walked in front of the mountain lion. As soon as he walked over, the 5 little fellows looked at Jiang Hai and bared their teeth as if saying, "You're not allowed to bully my mother." As for the big mountain lion, her eyes were filled with terror and fear. Unfortunately, she could not move now. She could only pant as she watched Jiang Hai squat in front of her. Looking at the mountain lion in front of him, Jiang Hai said, "If you die, they will be orphans. Looking at the mountain lion and the 5 little fellows in front of him, Jiang Hai curled his lips. Sometimes he hated his personality. Chapter 378. Boss, are you sure you don't want to catch those little guys? You know they're lions too. Seeing Jiang Hai walk out of the forest, Eleanor Cece couldn't help but ask. This is indeed a very troublesome matter. Let's wait until they have the tendency to attack. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai smiled but didn't say much. Because he was confident that these guys wouldn't have any tendency to attack in the future. Just now, Jiang Hai clearly had the opportunity to get rid of the mountain lion family. But looking at their pitiful appearance, Jiang Hai gave up in the end. Sometimes he's too soft-hearted. But just like what Eleanor Cece said, those are lions, so Jiang Hai has to be careful. So before leaving, he injected a stream of spiritual energy into the lioness, and the 5 little lions split the spiritual energy equally. This spiritual energy should be enough to make them recognize him as their master, although it won't be as good as taming dogs. After all, the amount of spiritual energy used was too little. Jiang Hai used more than 20 drops of blood and a lot of spiritual energy to tame Big Fool. This is the difficulty of taming wild animals. Currently, Jiang Hai doesn't want these mountain lions to become his pets. As long as they don't attack people, Jiang Hai can't be bothered. Anyway, the wild rabbits and pheasants in this forest can be caught all year round. Jiang Hai doesn't care. But he also informed Big Fool that in the future, large animals can't be allowed to come to this area. This time it's a mountain lion, next time it might be a brown bear or a polar bear. Jiang Hai is a little afraid when facing these things. Since Jiang Hai said that he won't care about these mountain lions for the time being, Eleanor Cece and the others also looked at each other. Although the mountain lions are a little threatening, they don't care because the mountain lions are seriously injured this time. They don't know the magical use of Jiang Hai's spiritual energy, but judging from the scene just now, this mountain lion is doomed. As for the 5 little guys without their mother, even if they were in Jiang Hai's forest, it would probably be very difficult for them to survive. So they didn't comment on Jiang Hai's pity and left with Jiang Hai. After they left the forest, it seemed that everything in the world was moving forward according to its original trajectory. Time passed minute by minute, the sun rose and set, and everything was happening step by step. Things like the opening of the World Expo, the British general election, and so on had nothing to do with Jiang Hai. As for things related to him, he also paid attention to them. The first was his manner. In late May, Zhang Dihai and the Walmart Group both came to visit. Maybe because of the incident in Atlantic City, Prawalton didn't come in person this time. Instead, she sent her assistant. She was also a beauty, but she wasn't very friendly to Jiang Hai. She completed the handover mechanically with Jiang Hai. The second batch of 2,000 cows was sent to the slaughterhouse, and the 300 cows from Zhang Dihai's side were also sent to the slaughterhouse. Originally, he planned to complete the handover 6 times, but now it seems that 4 times is enough. The only one who hadn't made a move yet was Chili in the capital, but it was useless for Chili to be anxious. The decoration of the Western restaurant was basically completed, but it would take a while to release the flavor, so she had been contacting the air transport company and the warehouse recently. She was also very ambitious about Jiang Hai's beef. Of course, she also knew a little about the relationship between Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshan, and Ai Xiaoxi. But what made her very conflicted was that, just as Feng Yunshan thought, because of Jiang Hai, it was very difficult for her to deal with these 2 women. She really felt a little afraid of shooting the rat for fear of breaking the vases. But no matter what she thought, time was still passing and she was still busy. She didn't know what would happen between her and Jiang Hai in the future. After the cows were separated and slaughtered, Jiang Hai's account had more than $300 million. There were also a lot fewer cows in the manor, but Jiang Hai's cowboys were very happy because the cows were really worth a lot of money. Jiang Hai and Shenty Clive didn't spend a lot of time together recently. Actually, it wasn't that they didn't spend a lot of time together, but that they didn't spend any time together at all. With the development of the town, Shenty Clive's own standards were still quite good. She was transferred to the town hall by the mayor, and was mainly responsible for the planning and implementation of the tourist guide issue. Winthrop's town hall had also submitted to the state their written opinion on wanting to turn the town into a tourist attraction, as well as the application for the project and the application for the route of the tour group. Of course, the state actually had a lot of ideas about this huge project worth several $100 million, but unfortunately, this was a cooperation between Jiang Hai and the town hall. Unlike in China, the state government and the town government were relatively independent when it came to political issues. Even if they wanted to intervene, they couldn't. This was different from the top to bottom in China. Here they could directly cooperate with the lowest level. This also saved a lot of trouble. Of course, this had nothing to do with Jianghai. Although the Massachusetts state government was a little depressed, Winthrop was still their county after all. If a county engaged in tourism, it would be a good thing for them if its GDP increased. Therefore, the things they submitted were all approved. Now, they just had to wait and see what would happen after these things were built. Jianghai wasn't a stingy boss. Of course, he wasn't a boss who spent money in vain. He would give the money, but at least he had to know where the details of the money went. He was also the most strict when it came to quality. If the quality wasn't good, he would directly reject the work. He didn't care about any hidden rules or what the foreman did to the materials. He had the right to supervise and everything was up to him. In addition, Moses Adams was a lawyer who wholeheartedly stood by Jianghai's side. He really couldn't tolerate even the slightest bit of sand in his eyes. When the work was just being built, there was once a construction company who changed the steel bars from 3 to 2. Jianghai directly refused to use them. Then he sued, forced the demolition, and found a new construction team to do it again. These people would definitely make money from his project and they would make a lot of money. If they still wanted to make some extra money, then sorry, they would lose a lot of money. Moses Adams specialized in this kind of work. He wouldn't let these people take advantage of him. Except for the chaos in the beginning, after a few days after several construction teams and suppliers changed, the construction in Winthrop entered the fastest stage. New streets began to be built, new villas were set up by the sea, new shops began to appear, and a new shooting range was being expanded. Seeing the whole town in full swing, the townspeople were very happy. This was because they knew that as long as this tourist spot was built, regardless of whether Jianghai and the town would make money, at least they would have another way to make money. Every day, seeing these workers busy in the town, everyone felt very happy because it also represented hope. Jianghai didn't know whether it was the hope of the townspeople, but after his 6th failed attempt to ask Sh20 Clive out, he was a little disappointed. To be honest, Jianghai's feelings for Sh20 Clive were the deepest. It could be said that this girl was the person he liked the most, but liking her was not love, nor was it responsibility. There were no real problems between them, so Jianghai and Sh20 Clive were a little uncertain. The closer a relationship was, the more distant it would be if they didn't contact each other for a long time. Jianghai felt that Sh20 Clive was not ready to enter his world, but she did have a good impression of him. However, if this continued, who knew? Jianghai casually threw his phone on the sofa next to him. He was speechless as he looked at the ceiling. He was sorting out his feelings. At the same time, the faces of those who had a relationship with him and could become his girlfriend also flashed in front of his eyes. The first one that flashed by was Feng Yunshan. Although at the beginning Jianghai and she only dated for one night, after those days Jianghai's feelings seemed to have changed. However, Jianghai knew that there would be no result between them, and she didn't want to be his lover yet. The second face that flashed by was Ai Xiaoxi. Jianghai was not very familiar with this girl. She gave him her most precious thing, but she also didn't express her feelings just like Feng Yunshan. This was also something that Jianghai couldn't figure out. After the two girls it was Sh20 Clive. Then it was Selena Gomez who made a mistake that night. After that, Chi Li's face also flashed by, but it was only for a moment before it was chased out of Jianghai's mind. For Jianghai, when he left home and prepared to fight for his Ph.D., it was already impossible for him to be with Chi Li. Although the person he knew the most was Chi Li, to be honest, Chi Li's chances were the smallest. At this time, Jianghai was no longer as empty as he was a few months ago when he went to town primary school. Now, his heart was filled with many people, many women. In addition to the above people, there were the most important Delina and Marion. There was also Aphrodite, who didn't seem to care about those accidents at all, and the other 9 girls. But after looking around, it seemed that there really wasn't anyone who could stay with him for the rest of his life. I'm really a jinx. He patted his forehead, feeling that he was really a failure of a rich man. In the past, when he read novels and TV series, Jianghai didn't know if the rich people, lovers and so on changed, but at least there was always someone around him. But now, Jianghai didn't even have anyone around him. Those who went out to play naturally didn't count. If he had a real girlfriend he would restrain himself a little. But the problem now was that he didn't even have a real girlfriend. What should Jianghai do? No matter how big or small, he was also a billionaire. He couldn't just use little left and right. Just as Jianghai was sighing with emotion that the most loyal partner in his life was by his side, a beautiful figure came to his manor. Chapter 379. Ding dong ding dong ding dong. Just as Jiang Hai was struggling, the doorbell suddenly rang. This surprised Jiang Hai a little, because it seems that people who often go in and out of his manor know the password of the manor's gate. Of course, no one knows the password of his villa, but the password of the gate is actually not a secret. Even Shenty Clive and Karma Cliff know that Moses Adams has gained Jiang Hai's trust after the Miami incident. At least, he knows the secret of the gate, and people who don't know the password of his gate, generally speaking, will not come to his place. Looking at the time, it's past 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't seem to be the time to receive guests. But although he was curious, Jiang Hai still stood up. No matter who it is, they will know. Hello, who is this? Picking up the phone in the villa, Jiang Hai looked at the picture recorded by the camera. It's me. In the camera, an Asian face appeared in front of him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, she said calmly. Hearing this person's words and this person's appearance, Jiang Hai suddenly remembered who she was. Dr. Bernice, please come in, come in. After Jiang Hai said a sentence, he immediately opened the door and walked out of his villa. At this time, outside the villa, Daliana and Marian were playing with their flower field outside the house. When they saw Jiang Hai coming out, they looked at Jiang Hai curiously, their eyes full of questions. Go and wash up, Dr. Bernice is here. Seeing the confusion in the eyes of the two girls, Jiang Hai explained with a smile. As soon as they heard that Bernice was coming, the two girls immediately stood up and ran into the house. For the female doctor who examined them, the two girls still have a good impression of her, so they naturally have to clean up a little. Looking at their flower field, Jiang Hai also showed a gentle smile on his face. Perhaps because of their previous lives, the two girls were somewhat repulsed by the outside world. Even if they were cured now, they were still too similar to normal children. They would absorb all the knowledge that Sheikh Clive taught them. They also understood and accepted new things, but they didn't like them very much. For example, they didn't like the games that children of their age were playing. They also didn't like Facebook, including Twitter and all kinds of things on the internet. They didn't like it. Even the craziest fans of their age didn't like it. It could be said that Jiang Hai couldn't do anything about it. Fearing that the two girls would become autistic, SH20 Clive had told them to do some extracurricular activities instead of just watching TV or running around the manor all day. After all, they were already big girls now. After the new year, although they had not celebrated their birthdays according to Wuxia, these two girls were already 15 years old. Girls in the 3rd grade of middle school were naturally considered big girls. Just as Jiang Hai was thinking about how to cultivate their extracurricular interests, they found a job of their own, which was planting flowers. At first they just planted some ordinary plants such as cacti, aloe and so on. However, now they already knew how to use their pocket money to buy beautiful flowers online. The place where they were going to plant flowers was about 1 mu of land. This flower field was well taken care of by the two girls. There were all kinds of flowers in it. Although it was planted a little late, the growth was still very good. Now many of them had already sprouted. Just as Jiang Hai was observing the garden, Penny came over from afar. Compared to the last time Jiang Hai saw her, when she was wearing a white coat, she was much more easygoing this time. Bernice is not ugly. She can be said to be very good-looking, comparable to Chili. Moreover, her character reminds Jiang Hai of the woman who gave him a headache. Even the taste of clothes is not much different between the two of them. Penny also liked to wear tough women's clothes. For example, she was wearing a white lace shirt on her upper body. Her lower body was a pair of ordinary jeans and a pair of ordinary sneakers. Her hair was neatly tied behind her head. Carrying a suitcase, she walked in just like that. It was simple but revealed a sense of freedom and handsomeness. Welcome, welcome. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I'll pick you up at the airport. Seeing Penny coming over, Jiang Hai immediately greeted her with a smile and said with a serious face. He owed this woman a favor, so naturally he had to please her. Is this your manner? The environment is really good. But unfortunately, his warm face seemed to be stuck to Penny's cold butt. Penny did not appreciate Jiang Hai's enthusiasm. She ignored Jiang Hai's hand that reached over to help her carry the suitcase. At the same time, she looked around and said indifferently, here it is. This is the residential area, that is the winery, then the cowshed and the grazing area, and a little further away is the fishing ground. We have a big beach here. If you have nothing to do, you can go and play. Hearing Penny's words, Jiang Hai also took back his hand, although he really wanted to leave without this girl. She was a guest, so Jiang Hai temporarily suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and introduced his manner. Sorry, I usually only concentrate on research. I came to the United States when I was 16 years old and have been studying. I don't have many friends. Shenty Clive is one of my few friends, so I don't know much about human affairs. If I offended you in any way, please forgive me. Maybe she heard the stiffness in Jiang Hai's words and the embarrassment on his face. Penny was stunned for a moment, then said to Jiang Hai faintly. Hearing her explanation, although Jiang Hai was still a little speechless, at least the other party explained it, so he felt better in his heart. No longer caring about her, Jiang Hai directly led her into his villa. As soon as he walked through the door of the villa, he saw Daliana and Marian running in from upstairs. Seeing Penny, the two stood respectfully beside her. "Hello, this is a gift for you." Seeing Daliana and Marian, Penny forced a smile on her face. Then she opened her bag and took out a stack of bracelets from it. She picked 2 pink bracelets and handed them to the 2 girls. After receiving the bracelets, the 2 girls were a little confused. "What's the use of this thing?" "This is something that our research institute has just developed. It is still a sample and has not been put on the market. This bracelet has electromagnetism and a miniature intelligent small head inside. The whole bracelet is made of pure silver. Not only can it sterilize, but it can also promote blood circulation. Not only can it make calls and record steps, but it can also monitor your heart and lung functions, the quality of your sleep at night, and so on. It is very useful." Looking at the 2 girls' strange faces, Penny also explained to them. Of course, at the same time, she did not forget to give one to Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai didn't expect that he would also have this thing. Holding it in his hand, Jiang Hai couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Jiang Hai didn't know if this bracelet had the same effect as Bernice said. But when he picked up the bracelet, he felt as if he was drinking tea. The speed at which he absorbed spiritual energy from the outside world slowly increased. "It's really useful?" Looking at the bracelet in front of him, Jiang Hai couldn't help but mutter in a low voice. He didn't know how this thing could increase his speed of absorbing spiritual energy. Was it because of the electromagnetism inside, or was it because of the silver? But it was unlikely that it was because of the silver, because Jiang Hai had fished out a lot of silver coins from the deep sea. But even when he was about to sleep, there was no other effect. Was it because of the electromagnetism? If it was really because of this, then Jiang Hai would have to think about it carefully. He would ask Penny about the electromagnetism and whether she could make a big one. This way his leveling speed would be faster. In fact, to put it bluntly, Jiang Hai's current life was mainly about enjoyment. This was because he didn't have much to strive for. He didn't have much ambition. His manner and his own ability could guarantee that he would live well in this world. Although some people said that a person without dreams was no different from a salted fish. But as far as the current situation was concerned, Jiang Hai really didn't have any dreams. He just wanted to enjoy his life like this. He didn't have any ambition to become the world's livestock king. He also didn't intend to enter real estate or IT. He just wanted to make money steadily. This was the way of the king. Now, the only obsession in his heart was the problem of leveling up. This problem had been pressing on Jiang Hai's mind for a long time. It was really a bit unbearable for him. In Jiang Hai's view, this problem was even more important than the problem of finding his other half. "Thank you." Then Jiang Hai also received the gift. Daliana and Marian also nodded and said thank you. After that, they took the initiative to help Bernice drag her big box in. "From today onwards, I will stay with you for a while, and your patient will probably come the day after tomorrow. If it is convenient for you, I will have to trouble you to pick him up." Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice turned her head and said to him, "Oh, no problem." Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also reacted and said with a smile. This was the agreement between Jiang Hai and Penny. She helped Jiang Hai to show proof, including medical certificates, health certificates, and so on. Don't underestimate these certificates. These things are not difficult to get if you have connections in China. According to Jiang Hai's friends in China, these things can be easily obtained as long as he returns to China. But in the United States, it is quite difficult to get. Chapter 380. The biggest difference between Wuxia and the United States was that in Wuxia, relationships were important. But in the United States, to be honest, relationships were not important. Americans cared more about benefits and relationships, which were not popular in the United States. Tea cools down when people are gone. This was the mainstream in China and even more so in the United States. Therefore, there was almost no backdoor for medical treatment, taxation, and so on, especially in the medical field. The United States had a very strong national regulation. Some drugs' content could not be lower by even a little bit. It was also very important for medical treatment. All the hospitals in the United States were connected to the internet. You saw a doctor in Miami and you saw another doctor in Washington. Your previous medical records can be found here. What medicine you took, what symptoms you had, and so on could all be seen. Therefore, the diagnosis that Bernice made for Jiang Hai was very risky. If she did not do it well, not only would she lose her doctor's license, but even the research institute would be closed down. That was why Jiang Hai said that he owed her a favor. According to her, the condition of this favor was to treat a person for her. According to her, this person was her sister. She had albinism since she was a child. She didn't care how the protagonist cured her. As long as she was cured, it was enough. It could be regarded as returning her favor. She came here first to decorate the room her sister was going to decorate when she came. Jiang Hai naturally didn't have anything against it. After carrying her luggage upstairs, Jiang Hai chatted with her briefly, and then went downstairs to prepare dinner. After all, it was Bernice's first time here, so Jiang Hai prepared a rich dinner. Lobster and beef, this was inevitable. In addition, there were many other delicacies. Basically, when people came to Jiang Hai's place, Jiang Hai would make these things for them to eat. This was his way of treating his guests. At least he would carefully select the food. After leaving the villa, Jiang Hai drove the four-wheeled motorcycle to the beach. After greeting Edward Anderson there, he went to the sea and caught 2 big lobsters. After that, Jiang Hai went back to prepare dinner. When Bernice came downstairs, Jiang Hai's dinner was almost ready. I can't eat much. You don't have to trouble yourself. Bernice went to the kitchen to see that Jiang Hai was busy. She was a little surprised because Jiang Hai's food was really rich. There were 2 lobsters, one steamed and the other baked with cheese. There were also 2 beef dishes, 1 steak and 1 beef stewed with burgundy wine. There were also some vegetarian dishes. It looked like there was a lot of food and the taste was definitely not wrong. It's okay. We ate like this when we were lonely. If we couldn't finish it, we gave it to them. Hearing Bernice's words, Jiang Hai smiled. At the same time, he pointed his chin at Xiao Bai and Goldie, who were squatting not far behind her. When she saw the 2 dogs, Bernice was shocked because she didn't see them when she came in just now. Now that she saw them, her eyes couldn't help but brighten. In fact, Bernice likes dogs, especially big dogs. In her eyes, Xiao Bai and Goldie are very beautiful dogs. She couldn't help but take 2 steps toward them. However, when she stretched out her hand and wanted to touch the 2 little guys, Goldie and Xiao Bai stood up and ran away. They knew that Bernice was Jiang Hai's guest, so they can't attack her. If it were an ordinary person, how could they approach them? They would have already pounced on them. But now they just ran away, that's all. Your dogs are really smart, but it's best for dogs not to eat human food because it's too salty and too oily. It's not good for their bodies. Generally speaking, dogs have to be fed special dog food. Looking at the 2 dogs running away, Bernice also knew that they didn't welcome her, so she didn't follow them. Instead, she squatted down and looked at the 2 dogs. Oh, it's okay. In fact, before Jiang Hai raised the dog, he had also heard about this. But after raising the dog, he didn't care about it anymore. The food he fed had spiritual energy in it, so naturally he wanted to abuse the dog food. Okay. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice also shrugged. Since the owner didn't care, then she, as an outsider, shouldn't say more. Looking at the 2 dogs carefully, Bernice became more and more surprised. These 2 dogs were quite strong, their eyes were clear, their hair was unusually soft, and they didn't have any smell. This made her, who has been paying attention to the dogs, couldn't help but feel that these 2 dogs were really well raised by Jiang Hai. If they participate in the competition, it shouldn't be a problem for them to get a ranking. Just as she was engrossed in her observation, Jiang Hai had already served the dishes. Delina, Marian, eat, Dr. Bernice, eat. After shouting upstairs, Jiang Hai also said to Bernice, who was squatting there. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice couldn't help but smile, stood up and walked to the dining room. At this time, Daliana and Marian, who were upstairs, also quickly ran down. After saying a few words to Bernice, they sat in their seats. After Jiang Hai brought the last bread, everyone was ready to eat. Come have a taste of my beef. It's one of the specialties here. In accordance with the principle of hospitality, Jiang Hai first forked a large piece of steak for Bernice and put it on her plate, then he got his own. After Bernice nodded to Jiang Hai, she cut a small piece of steak and stuffed it into her mouth. But as soon as she stuffed it in, her eyes suddenly lit up. Compared with Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi in China, Bernice is obviously a person who has eaten good food. She opened a research institute in the United States, so she is definitely considered to be in the upper class. For her, although premium grade of beef is also very luxurious, but it is not to the extent that she can't eat it. But now when she ate Jiang Hai's beef she was a little surprised. Because this beef, although it is very bad according to the highest standard abroad, the level of a 3-star chef in a Michelin restaurant, Jiang Hai is not even a half-star. No, he is not even a professional chef, but the taste of the beef surprised her. This beef tastes great. Is this the Japanese 5-grade Wagyu beef? Looking at the beef in front of her, Bernice said in surprise. Oh, this is not the Japanese Wagyu beef but the beef in my manor. If you want to eat more, I have a lot here. Jiang Hai's favorite thing to do is to watch others praise his beef. This is the most satisfying time for him. Have a lot? This kind of beef is only produced in the middle of the brain and eye meat. Your rules here are not particularly big. Do you have a lot of cows? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice asked curiously while stuffing beef into her mouth. Not too much, but I have a way to increase the output of this beef. Hearing Bernice's words, Jiang Hai didn't say too much, but he also revealed some of his specialties. Hearing this, Bernice thought for a moment and put down the knife. What's wrong? Not to your taste? Seeing her put down the knife, Jiang Hai asked strangely. No, it's delicious, but I treat you as a friend. I don't care what you do, but have you ever thought that if your beef is targeted by someone with bad intentions, when your wealth is also noticed by the authorities, how will you explain the source of the beef? Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said with a serious look on her face. What do you mean? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but froze for a moment. He really didn't think about this problem before. In his opinion, the United States is a country that protects personal privacy. In his own manner, he can do whatever he wants, others can't control him, but he forgot that even if the United States is a country that protects privacy, but the authorities also have political power. If he makes a small fuss and no one pays attention to it, what if someone pays attention to it? Now he can make more than $1 billion yuan a year with cows. What if he can make billions when he can? Now he can already make a lot of premium grade beef. What if the price is still rising? Jiang Hai didn't think about this before, but now that Bernice mentioned it, Jiang Hai subconsciously thought about it. It wasn't that Jiang Haiki was worried about the future and only thought about the worst-case scenario. She had to take precautions against these things before they happened. It's literally what it means. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice picked up the knife again. She knew that Jiang Hai understood her words. Although Jiang Hai doesn't look very smart, he should be able to figure out what is going on. In this world there is no absolute light and absolute justice. Moreover, when Jiang Hai's method of raising cattle attracted the attention of the United States top officials and they wanted to promote this method, if Jiang Hai didn't agree, then he would be a typical example of the opposite. For the interests of the majority, sacrificing the interests of the minority, this is the most solid principle in this world. Then what should we do? Hearing her words, this time it was Jiang Hai's turn to not eat. Originally he still wanted to stay in his own weaving environment. In this environment he wanted to live like this for the rest of his life, but now it seems a bit difficult. There are two ways, one is to treat the symptoms, the other is to treat the root cause. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of her, Bernice said slowly. What do you mean by treating the symptoms? Hearing that she really has a way, Jiang Hai was also a little surprised and asked curiously. Treating the cup is to find someone to rely on, but I don't think you will do this, and when this person loses power or changes, this umbrella will be useless and it will cost a lot of money. Cutting another piece of beef and stuffing it into her mouth, Bernice said. What about the root cause? Indeed, according to Jiang Hai's character, he is unlikely to do this. If he really wants to do this, then there is no need for him to go abroad. In China he is afraid that his gains will be inexplicably taken away by others, so he chose to go abroad. If it is the same abroad, then what is the difference between him and China? Come up with a scientific condition that can be convincing, preferably one that can't be replicated by others. Looking at the slightly panicked Jiang Hai, Bernice continued to eat the beef indifferently, but her words made Jiang Hai's depressed mood a little better in an instant. Chapter 381. While Jiang Hai was studying Bernice's words on the other side of the ocean in Jiang Hai's motherland, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. It was time to go to work. As the capital, every street in the capital was crowded at this time. To be honest, the speed of the traffic was much slower than the speed of bicycles. Most of the cars were firmly stuck on the road. They were listening to the radio, cursing the traffic, anxiously looking at their watches, praying that their boss would arrive later today. In front of a high-class office building, An obviously new Mercedes-Benz SLK quickly flashed out of the traffic in the distance. After a slight flaw, almost hitting a roadside trash can, the car stopped in front of the office building. Then the door of the front passenger seat opened, and a fashionably dressed girl walked out from inside. "You go up first, I'll park the car." Looking at the girl who got out of the car, another woman sitting in the driver's seat said to her with a smile. If Jiang Hai was here, he would definitely recognize these two people. The driver was Feng Yunqian and the one sitting in the car was Ai Xiaoxi. Since returning from the United States, many days have passed unknowingly. These two girls were very busy these days. The next day, Feng Yunqian said goodbye to her former boss. Of course, her boss did not lack a woman like her. With the increasing pressure of the recent policies, he was happy for Feng Yunqian to leave, so he did not say anything. Then Feng Yunqian sold the house she was living in now. With the money from the sale of the house and the money Jiang Hai gave her, she bought a house on the edge of the Third Ring Road in the capital. It was a very good neighborhood with 2 bedrooms. It cost her a total of nearly 7 million yuan. But there was still a lot of money left. Then she transferred the money back to her hometown and asked her family to buy her a 3-bedroom house in Bing City. There was a big difference between the housing prices in the capital and in Bing City. A 2-bedroom house in the capital cost 6 to 7 million yuan, but in Bing City, a 3-bedroom house in the Third Ring Road only cost a little more than 1 million yuan. This was the difference. But after buying the new house, she did not live alone. The girl living with her was Ai Xiaoxi. According to her, although it was impossible for her and Jiang Hai to be together, she had to help Jiang Hai keep an eye on Ai Xiaoxi. After Ai Xiaoxi changed the money in her bank card into RMB, she transferred 3 million yuan to her hometown to pay back her family's money to treat the illness of her brother and parents. The rest of the money was enough for her family to buy a big house in the county. After receiving the money, Ai Xiaoxi's family cried because they vaguely knew that Ai Xiaoxi's money didn't come from a legitimate source. In the end, it was Feng Yunqian who spoke up for Ai Xiaoxi, saying that she found a rich boyfriend and lent the money to her. But after saying this, Ai Xiaoxi's parents always wanted to see Jiang Hai. When Jiang Hai went back, he made a big fuss. Of course, this was a story in the future. At least now it was settled temporarily. In addition to these things, Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqian also had the intention to suppress the company. Feng Yunqian was not a kind person, and this time she supported Ai Xiaoxi, which made her even more unfriendly. Especially the fat pig manager who originally had some feelings for Ai Xiaoxi. After knowing that Ai Xiaoxi and Feng Yunqian had found a big backer together, he became honest. At least on the surface, the people in the company did not dare to show off to them. As for the photos they took in order to avoid Jiang Hai's jealousy, they were strictly covered up. But even so, the two's delicate faces caused a sensation on the internet. On a goddess website for otakus, Feng Yunqian, who was originally in the top 10, even rushed to the top 3. Ai Xiaoxi, with her young capital, also rushed to the top 3, and even took the first place for a few days. The two girls became a lot more popular in an instant. Sure enough, in the eyes of these otakus, 13 Grid Abroad was much better than in China. Especially the style they showed in the photos, it was really fascinating. "Okay, Sister Chin, what do you want to drink?" Hearing what Feng Yunqian said to her, Ai Xiaoxi also chuckled, then took her donkey brand bag and asked her with a chuckle. The bag in her hand was given to her by Jiang Hai. The donkey brand precious leather series, sold in China, is worth 350,000 renminbi. Sold abroad, this thing is also worth 30,000 US dollars, nearly 200,000 renminbi. She has to admit that it is really expensive. But no matter where she goes with this bag, it is not an exaggeration to say that it is the center of attention. Those who are knowledgeable know that this thing is very expensive. Iced coffee. Hearing Ai Xiaoxi's words, Feng Yunqian also smiled. She has to admit that Ai Xiaoxi's attitude is really good. If she was a man, she would also like her. After saying a sentence, she started the engine and went to the underground parking lot. As for Ai Xiaoxi, she walked into the office building in front of her. In the Starbucks on the first floor, she ordered 2 cups of coffee. While waiting, a figure came to her. "Xiaoxi." Hearing someone call her from behind, Ai Xiaoxi turned her head curiously. When she saw the person, her pupils couldn't help but tremble, but it only took a second to return to normal. "It's you, what a coincidence." Looking at the man standing in front of her, Ai Xiaoxi said very plainly, "Coincidence? Coincidence is over? In order to see you, I have been waiting here for 3 days." Hearing Ai Xiaoxi's words, the man's body couldn't help but tremble. Then he said to Ai Xiaoxi with a serious face, Oh, why are you looking for me in such a hurry? Hearing his words, Ai Xiaoxi nodded and continued to ask. Listening to the conversation between strangers, the man really felt his heart bleeding. We have reached the point where I have to look for you for something? Looking at Ai Xiaoxi in front of him, the man said with a trembling voice. It was hard for him to imagine that the woman in front of him was once his true love. No, you misunderstood me. What I mean is, don't look for me if you have something in the future. My boyfriend will not be happy if he knows. Looking at the man in front of her, Ai Xiaoxi said very plainly. So. Flowers fluttered in the wind, the north wind whistled, heaven and earth, a vast expanse. Just as Ai Xiaoxi's voice fell, the song playing in the shop next door happened to be playing. The man looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His face was filled with disbelief, regret, and helplessness. Your boyfriend? Isn't I your boyfriend? You have other boyfriends? Looking at Ai Xiaoxi in front of him, the man shouted crazily. Hearing his words, Ai Xiaoxi looked at him very plainly. This man was called Yu Hongji. He was Ai Xiaoxi's boyfriend in college. Of course, the two of them only held hands at most. Ever since her family got into trouble, this man didn't help her. Instead, he dragged her down. Since then, Ai Xiaoxi actually no longer regarded him as her boyfriend. This didn't mean that Ai Xiaoxi had to force this man to do anything for her. However, this man's family was in the capital. He had a house and a car. Although he wasn't very rich, he still had a few 100,000 yuan. When her family got into trouble, let alone a few 100,000 yuan, he didn't even take out 10,000 yuan. Even if she wanted to borrow money from his family, there was no way. According to Yu Hongji's mother, they weren't married yet. Why should she borrow money from him? Even if they were married, what obligation did they have to borrow money from him? Anyway, it meant that he didn't have any money. His money belonged to him. It had nothing to do with her. She understood this. However, a boyfriend who was unwilling to help her when she needed it the most, and who only wanted her to live according to his wishes, was better off not having him. Therefore, when she ignored this man's objection and entered this company, she had already called him and officially broke up with him. Now, seeing this man come looking for her again, Ai Xiaoxi's heart, which had already been captured by Jiang Hai, didn't have the slightest ripple. Sorry, you can only be considered my ex-boyfriend now. Don't destroy the last bit of your existence in my heart. Thank you. Looking at Yu Hongji, who was about to go crazy, Ai Xiaoxi's heart was very calm as she said faintly. Miss, your coffee is ready. At this moment, the waiter handed over 2 cups of packaged coffee. Thank you. After taking the coffee, Ai Xiaoxi calmly walked out. However, Yu Hongji grabbed her arm. At this moment, Jiang Hai didn't have any informants in the capital. Naturally, he didn't know what was going on. At this moment, he was sitting on the sofa and looking at Bernice. Earlier at the dinner table, Bernice talked about Jiang Hai's cow and whether or not they needed to find an excuse. Jiang Hai also fell into deep thought. Originally, he thought that the oil futures he had in the United States would be the best amulet. After all, the real political forces in the United States were the major families and plutocrats. The most famous ones were the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgan Chase. These plutocrats were very interested in oil. As long as someone threatened him, Jiang Hai could use these things to get through safely. However, he didn't think about what he would do if the people who were interested in his manor were the United States government. If other people were interested in Jiang Hai's manor, it was nothing more than wanting to own it. That way the plutocrats would be able to use it. However, what if the United States government asked Jiang Hai to disclose the reason for raising the cow? What would Jiang Hai do? If Jiang Hai didn't agree to disclose the reason, they would force a team of experts to dissect Jiang Hai's cow. What would he do then? Or directly imprison Jiang Hai and watch him raise cattle? Or torture him to extract a confession? What should he do? It wasn't that Jiang Hai's heart was too dark. When he heard Bernice's words, he couldn't help but gradually walk in the direction of darkness. Chapter 382. Ah, who is special, what should I do? Is it a dead knot? Patting his forehead, Jiang Hai looked at the chandelier on the ceiling and said with some speechlessness. In fact, it's quite easy to solve. You just have to announce how to raise cattle. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice, who was sitting next to him, glanced at him and said indifferently. It can be seen that she really doesn't care much about these things. In Bernice's view, if Jiang Hai really has any secret recipe, and if the UA government wants it, then it will be announced. But Jiang Hai listened to her words, and the expression on his face was like a secret. The problem is that it can't be announced. Looking at Bernice helplessly, Jiang Hai whispered in a low voice. If it's the same as your treatment method, it can't be announced, then you can find a way to divert attention. For example, you can set up a research lab yourself, and then study why your cattle mutated, don't you know that? When the time comes, if the higher-ups send someone to investigate, just let them investigate. You are so cooperative they won't bother you for the sake of influence. Looking at Jiang Hai, who seemed to have a headache, Bernice speechlessly looked at him and said, "This is what you said, the way to cure the root cause?" Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned at first, then his eyes suddenly lit up. "Yes, if I don't say it all the time, those people will definitely think that I have some secret recipe, but if I don't tell them, it will be easy to mess up. But if I also make it clear and tell them that I don't know, and if anyone is interested they can come and study it, then it will be easier. After all, the UA government still protects privacy on the surface." Now it's not that Jiang Hai doesn't want to disclose this secret recipe, but because Jiang Hai doesn't know it, then it's much easier, at least they are unlikely to deal with Jiang Hai in a tough way. This is also a cure, but it may be a little troublesome because a research institute is very expensive. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice still said calmly. She was only responsible for coming up with ideas. No, the cost of the research institute is not small, but this may also be a way to make money. After listening to her words, Jiang Hai shook his head. If it was about these crooked ideas, he might not be able to do it. But when it came to making money, Jiang Hai's brain turned very quickly. The biggest purpose of this research institute was to hide Jiang Hai's bulls and remove Jiang Hai himself. At that time, these people would at most discover that Jiang Hai's pasture was particularly good. That was all. No one would suspect Jiang Hai. However, in addition to getting himself out of trouble, Jiang Hai can also use this research institute to make money. For example, if there were tourists, they could visit the research institute. This was also a tourist attraction. Secondly, the research institute could also help him raise cattle more scientifically and distribute new cattle breeds. All in all, although this thing requires a lot of money, it is very beneficial to Jiang Hai. Do you know anyone who is involved in biology? Find someone to help me open a research institute. Looking at Bernice, Jiang Hai said seriously. Don't even think about the people I know. They are all researchers. Even if your cattle are expensive, they won't come because they will feel insulted. You can only choose the person you want. Hearing Bernice's words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be speechless. Indeed, if you ask a doctor who treats people to treat dogs, he will feel insulted. Even treating dogs is like this, let alone studying cattle. Even in the United States, cattle have a high status, but they won't attract people. By the way, where does Xanthi live? I will go and play with her tomorrow. Looking at Jiang Hai's sad face, Bernice said slowly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also casually said the location of Xanthi's house. You even know her house, it seems that you really have something going on. By the way, how did you meet Xanthi? Hearing that Jiang Hai could name Xanthi Clive's house number without even thinking about it, Bernice couldn't help but be a little curious. At first, it was because the town's elementary school collapsed due to heavy snow. Then I was also a member of Winthrop Town, so I donated some money. Then I officially met Xanthi. Then she heard that I had never been to Boston, so she took the initiative to be my guide, and then... By the way, I think I know where to find people who study cattle. Hearing Bernice's words, Jiang Hai also recalled and said. His meeting with Xanthi was really a bit dramatic. But halfway through he suddenly smashed his fist. He remembered where to find people who study cattle. You know? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice looked at him strangely. I have to thank you for this. Patting her on the shoulder, Jiang Hai quickly ran upstairs to his room. He has to hurry up and check. If he remembers correctly, those researchers should be in Boston. Just as Jiang Hai was gratified in his heart and found a solution, the atmosphere in the coffee shop in the capital was a bit tense. Do you like money that much? For the sake of money you sold your body and even your soul. Do you have any shame? I came to find you and you said this? You smelly bitch. How could I be so blind to fall in love with a green tea like you? Seeing that Ai Xiaoxi was about to leave, Yu Hongji finally couldn't help but shout loudly. Hearing his shout, not only the people in the coffee shop, but also the people who work here all looked over. As for Ai Xiaoxi, the people here have actually heard about her. She is young, beautiful, and energetic. The people who work in this building usually have a good impression of her. Of course, this refers to the men. Men are the most loyal people in the world. From the age of 18 to the age of 80, they all like women in their early 20s. They are young, beautiful, and have a good figure. This will not change for the rest of their lives. Unlike women who often change their minds regardless of age and like different people. It is not an exaggeration to say that a woman like Ai Xiaoxi is the public enemy here. Now that they see her make a fool of herself, the men here are very excited, and the women are also very excited. They can't wait to see her make a fool of herself. Feeling the eyes of the people around her, Ai Xiaoxi, who was still pretending to be calm, began to become anxious. You let go, I'm not your girlfriend anymore. I don't need you to care about my business. Looking at the man, Ai Xiaoxi said with disgust. She has long known that this man may come to pester her, but she didn't expect this guy to be so shameless. Yes, I don't need to care about you. There are plenty of people who will care about you. Whether they tell you to kneel, you don't dare to stand. Whether they tell you to use your mouth, you don't dare to use your hands. When you were with me, you pretended to be a saintess. You would hesitate for a long time just to hold my hand. Now you've been out for less than 3 months and you've become so arrogant. Are you willing to be a slave of those rich people? Do you want money? Come on, I have money too. How many times do you want? Come on. Seeing more and more people gathering and seeing Ai Xiaoxi struggling, Yu Hongji completely lost his mind and shouted loudly. You bastard! Go away. Feeling Yu Hongji's madness, Ai Xiaoxi stepped forward and stepped on Yu Hongji's foot. Although Yu Hongji was in great pain, he didn't let go of her. Instead, he raised his hand and slapped her. You bitch, how dare you step on me? I'll beat you to death. Just as the slap was about to land on Ai Xiaoxi's face, a figure suddenly flashed from afar. When Ai Xiaoxi opened her eyes, she found that Yu Hongji, who was still holding on to her, had been kicked far away. At this moment, there were 2 big men holding him down on both sides. No matter how crazy he was, it was difficult for him to move. Seeing this scene, Ai Xiaoxi subconsciously took a step back. However, when she took a step back, someone pushed her, stopping her in her tracks. At the same time, she was startled. She turned around in surprise and found a woman who was about the same height as her, older than her, and very beautiful. She was wearing an office lady's suit and had an extremely strong aura standing behind her. You're Ai Xiaoxi? Where's Feng Yunshan? Seeing Ai Xiaoxi's panicked gaze, the woman glanced at her indifferently. She didn't say any nonsense and directly asked her. Sister Chin. She didn't come. Do you need something from her? Looking at this woman, Ai Xiaoxi subconsciously lied. She felt that this woman's aura was really strong. She didn't know if Sister Chin had offended this person, but it seemed that if she had really offended this person, then it would be really troublesome. After all, she was a person who brought bodyguards with her when she went out. Xiaoxi. But unfortunately, sometimes people are so slow. As soon as her voice fell, Feng Yunshan had already run over. Just now, she had just parked the car and heard that there was a fight upstairs, and the opponent was Ai Xiaoxi. She didn't have time to wait for the elevator, but directly took off her high heels and ran all the way up. But when she ran into the coffee shop, she was stunned, because she did know the woman standing in front of Ai Xiaoxi. Hello, we meet again. I heard that you went to Jiang Hai's place. When her. It seems that you have made up your mind. Do you want to come and talk to me? Turning her head, looking at Feng Yunshan, this woman with a strong aura said lightly. Can I say no? Looking at this woman, Feng Yunshan slowly put down the shoes inside. Although her words were still a little stiff and a little arrogant, it could be seen from her face that she had already accepted her fate, that she was already terrified. Of course not. Come, pack your things. You go and tell their boss. Let's go, I'll treat you to beef. I think you must miss the taste, right? With a chuckle, the woman waved her hand faintly. Then someone beside her went upstairs. Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi looked at each other, put on their shoes and followed her out. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.